Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the May 18th, 2022 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I am Joanne Crowley, Chair of the Yarmouth Planning Board. As this is a hybrid meeting with participants both in person and remote, I need to read the following statement into the record. This is to formally advise that, as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, paragraphs 18 to 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16th, 2021. The Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public meeting on Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the hearing room. Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664. The public is welcome to attend. Remote access provided is on the meeting agenda posted on the town website under the Agenda and Meeting Minutes tab. Please select Planning. I will begin by taking roll call. Brad Goodwin.
Present.
Liz Hartsgrove. Susan Britta.
Present.
Will Rubenstein.
Present.
Chris Vincent.
Here.
Jim Saban.
Present.
Joanne Crowley, present. Seeing that we have a quorum present, I'll now call the meeting to order. For remote public participation, during the public comment period for this public hearing, I will invite the audience to comment. Online audience members can use the raise hand button to notify me, or dial-in members should press *9 on their phones. All audience members will be muted until you are recognized by me to participate. Once recognized, audience members are asked to identify themselves first and last name and affiliation for the public record. I would now ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would now like to formally open this concurrent public hearing for definitive subdivision number 2936 and special permit 116, 2936A. Excuse me. Public hearing on both of these requests, and welcome the residents of Yarmouth who are here this evening in person and those who may be joining us remotely, as well as the representatives of the applicants, including J.M. Riley Associates and the Davenport Companies. I would encourage any members of the public here this evening who have not done so, who are actually here, to please sign in so that we may have a record of your attendance during the public hearing. Let me just run through what our format is going to be for this hearing this evening. I will read the legal ad, bear with me, and which gives a brief overview of the project. I will then state how the meeting will be run. I'll run through that. So I'd like to first open the hearing by reading the public hearing notice that appeared. As published in the Cape Cod Times on 5/22, 5/2/22, and 5/9/22, and sent to required abutters on April 29th, 2022. The Yarmouth Planning Board Public Hearing Notice. In accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 11 and 41, Sections 81T and 81U, the Yarmouth Planning Board will hold concurrent public hearings on Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the hearing room of the Yarmouth Town Offices, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664, and via remote access at our website or via telephone at 301-715-8592 and entering the webinar ID 898-3641-5124 to consider the applications of the Davenport Companies for approval of the following. 1. Definitive Subdivision 2936A. The owner, the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River, 450 Highland Ave, Fall River, Massachusetts, 02720-3701. The applicant, the Davenport Companies, 20 Main Street, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664. Property location, an unnumbered lot on the south side of Route 6A between Kencompsett Circle and Outward Reach and across the street from Hockanum Road, Assessor's Map 125, Parcel 39, a 15.3 acre lot in zoning district R40 residential. The applicant is seeking approval for a 14-lot, single-family clusters definitive subdivision plan entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan of Land of Proposed Single-Family Cluster Development at Lot 2, Route 6A, Yarmouthport, Mass. For the Davenport Companies. The plan was prepared by John M. O'Reilly, PLS of JM O'Reilly Associates, Inc., and it is dated February 18th, 2022, and stamped March 15th, 2022. Number 2, petition number 116. The applicant is seeking a special permit for a 14-lot, single-family cluster subdivision under the provisions of the Yarmouth zoning bylaw, section 402. Copies of the plans and application materials are on file with the planning board and may be inspected Monday through Friday between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. in the planning division office at the Yarmouth Town offices or on the Town of Yarmouth website. Any person wishing to be heard on this matter should appear at the time and place designated above. Written comments will be accepted and should be directed to the planning board, care of Kathy Williams, Town Planner, at kwilliams@yarmouth.ma.us, no later than May 17th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Signed, Joanne Crowley, Chair of the Yarmouth Planning Board. So let me run through how the meeting will be run this evening. Presentation will be given by the applicants. Town Planner Kathy Williams will then summarize her staff report that she has prepared. We will have any initial comments from planning board members. Written comments will then be provided and read and summarized by Kathy Williams, the Town Planner. I will then open up the meeting to public comment from those present. When giving public comment, I ask that you come to the microphone at the podium, state your name and address, and please direct your comments or questions to me, and I will then redirect them for answers to members of the planning board, staff members, and/or the applicants. After public comment, the planning board will consider any additional comments or questions that they have. The planning board will then review and discuss and deliberate on how we want to proceed based on what we've heard this evening, and what additional information we may want as part of this proceeding. So that's how the process is going to work. I'd like to invite members of the representatives that are here tonight to introduce themselves and to provide us with your presentation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowley and members of the board. I'm Paul Tardif. I'm an attorney in Yarmouthport, and I represent the Davenport Companies. I do want to introduce some people. Seated next to me is Robert Reedy, and next to him, John O'Reilly from JM O'Reilly and Associates, located in Brewster. Also here, Christian Davenport from the Davenport Companies, DeWitt Davenport from the Davenport Companies, and also, I think by Zoom, Randall Hart from a company called BHB, who will join us as his expertise comes into play here. As you indicated, we are seeking the approval of a definitive subdivision plan to create a 14-lot single-family cluster subdivision on 15.3 acres off of Route 6A in Yarmouthport, currently owned by the Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River. Parcel is located on the south side of Route 6A, across from Hockanum Road and between Concomsit Circle and Outward Reach. Parcel is currently somewhat wooded and undeveloped, but includes a 180-foot wide electrical transmission easement, which is in the far rear of the property, away from 6A, I should say, as well as an easement for the town of Yarmouth water main. As you indicated, the property is in the R40 zoning district and is not in the Aquifer Protection District or Zone 2 of any drinking water wells. Section 402 of the zoning bylaw allows for single-family cluster subdivisions with which reduces lot sizes with a minimum 30% open space. As a cluster subdivision, the project has gone through site plan review, when you have those notes in your package, I believe, and approval by this board of a preliminary subdivision, which I think we did way back in December. last year, I think it was, right?
No, 2020.
December 2nd,
2020.
2020.
2 years. Well, time flies. Definitive subdivision and a special permit for the single-family cluster subdivision, which is a use A4 in your zoning bylaw, are required through this board, the special permit granting authority, the planning board. I do want to give you an overview. I know you've seen this before, but it has been some time, so we'll have to refresh your recollection of what we're doing here. A total of 14 buildable lots are proposed, and the remainder of the parcel converted to open space land. As we indicated, 15.3 acre parcel, but the project proposes approximately 5.3 acres will be converted to open space, which accounts for 41.5% of the acreage available for the cluster development. The town's zoning bylaw only requires 30% of the cluster developments be reserved for open space. We've gone to 41.5. The individual lots that are being created, 14 of them, range in size from 10,076 square feet, which is the smallest, up to 28,512 square feet. The proposed dwellings are all going to be identical, 46 feet by 28 feet, designed for 4 bedrooms. The lots and the dwelling locations have been laid out so as to conform to all the zoning bylaws and the minimum requirements of a single-family residential cluster development. The frontage for the lots is provided by 2 new 40-foot wide rights-of-way. Each will include a cul-de-sac area for the vehicle turnaround. The right-of-way will be improved with a 24-foot wide paved road. The road will include 2 11-foot wide travel lanes, 1-foot berms on either side. Miracle Way, the road that will intersect with Route 6A, is 627 feet long. Faith Road is 125 feet long. The proposed access off of Route 6A was located so as to maximize the vehicle line of sight to the east. The project proposes site easements, a site easement, vegetation trimming and grading along Route 6A to the east of the proposed intersection in order to extend that line of sight from what it is currently by at least another 100 feet. The proposed trimming and the grading will improve the site distance to the east. Site distance to the west is more than sufficient. Proposed site distance onto Miracle Way for a vehicle turning left off of Route 6A is greater than 200 feet. The road is sufficiently sized to allow the Yarmouth Fire Department ladder truck to access both roads and turn around within the cul-de-sacs. Due to the tight spacing of the roadway intersections along Route 6A adjacent to the project site, the proposed intersection is unable to meet the regulations of 4.2.1 sub J street intersection spacing. The project is requesting a waiver from this regulation and has cited the proposed intersection at the best possible location with regard to site distance to the east and also across the intersection to vehicles entering Route 6A from Hockanum Road. And you will hear from Randall Hart in a few minutes, who will explain this in greater detail. At the preliminary subdivision plan hearing on December 2, the board was almost unanimous in support of waiving the need for any sidewalks on these roads. So they're not shown on the plan. I also would like to address some of the comments in the staff report of May 13, 2022 from Ms. Williams. And I'll address the ones that really need to be addressed. The rest are either approvals or otherwise. I don't want to waste your time. The building department it wants to make sure that each lot conforms to the maximum lot coverage of 25%, and it defines lot coverage including buildings, decks, driveways, bulkheads, and any accessory structures. And I think we meet all of them on every lot. The smallest lot is 10,076 square feet, as I indicated. 25% of that would be 2,519 square feet. Even with a proposed structure measuring 46 by 28, which is 1,288 square feet, it's only about half of the lot coverage that's permissible. Driveways, accessory structures will need to comply, but I don't see any of these lots exceeding the 25% coverage. Conservation, they'd like a stormwater management permit to be issued. I think we are going to be going there soon to meet with them for that permit. The health department, with regard to the Title V systems, I know that there was a lot of discussion about whether we should do something in the front, in the back, on the side, how this was all going to work. And I believe that the plan that we have submitted today, and that's up here, has been approved by the Board of Health. I believe there's a memo in there from Mr. Murphy indicating that these separate systems for the 14 houses are sufficient and permissible according to the Board of Health. Obviously, the planning department needs to vet this. I did send in, albeit today, so I know you haven't had a chance to review them, an open space restriction and easement, and also protective covenants, restrictions, rights, and reservations, which will be recorded as part of any relief given, which outlines the obligations of the developer, of the homeowners association that's been created, what can and cannot be done on the open space. So there are restrictions there, which outlines all of those rights and obligations. And I understand that you'll be reviewing those, and we'll get back with comment if need be. And finally, the community development housing. As you know, we're creating new housing. Typically, this would require the need for 2 affordable houses out of the 14. There is a payment in lieu of those affordable housing units, which is our plan at this point to pay the payment in lieu to alleviate the need for those affordable houses. We also understand that the price has gone up in the last year and a half, and that's fine. We understand. So that will result in a payment of $289,000 to the community development housing, who can use that very well, I'm sure, to create housing somewhere else in town, and much needed at this point. What I'm going to do at this point, if I could, is turn it over to Mr. Reedy, and then Mr. O'Reilly, and then Mr. Hart, if I could do that. Is that
Sure.
accessible?
Good evening, Robert Reedy, J.M. O'Reilly Associates. I'm primarily going to just kind of review a few of the other staff comments that Paul did not already address. John, if you want to just switch over to the staff comments for a second. So just running through these, this was a request that we kind of reviewed each of these. Paul already covered the fire department, had no issues with our plans.
Table, I'm sorry. I'm getting there. Sorry.
There we go. Regarding the water, we really have no issues with any of the required revisions that are requested there. The only real question, which I have a call into the water superintendent, is really just how to handle the 5-foot separation between the water main and drainage structures. And Kathy, maybe you can provide guidance in your comments after this, but just as to whether we should be holding 5 feet from the drainage structures or 6 feet from the right-of-way edge, just because that's part of the subdivision rules and regulations. Knowing that we have already asked for a waiver from that, we certainly are open to the idea of moving the water main further away from the drainage structures. I think we're also open to the idea of flipping the sides of the water main and the electric and gas. I think these would be pretty simple fixes that would address the issue of water main and drainage separation distance. We would just simply need a little bit of relief in terms of the separation from the right-of-way edge. Moving on to building, Paul did already cover that, but just to confirm, even including the driveway that we're showing on lot 1, we are below 23% lot coverage. So that includes the building and the driveway as we're currently showing it. And that was the smallest lot we have. So we're certainly below 25% with all the lots. I'm moving through the next few that Paul already covered. Flip to the second page here.
Got fired, huh?
Just briefly noting the waivers that were requested to change. We have no issue making those adjustments. The miscellaneous comments on the plans. The C1 existing condition plan. You just had noted the requirement of test pits and perk tests at locations of leaching structures. We did do test holes in May of 2020. Obviously, during that period of time, having any sort of witnessed holes or perk tests was not possible. There was no towns that were coming out for anything 2 months after the pandemic began. So it was unwitnessed at the time. However, we did test pits in all drainage structure areas, also the 2 low points of the site. And we also did a variety of test pits across the site so that we would have a general sense of what soil conditions were across the site. I personally did the soil evaluation. I've done hundreds of test holes over my career. No issues with any of the soils we saw. We're certainly confident that we'll have no issue finding suitable soils for the perk test that we'll need to do for the health department permit. So just wanted to note that, obviously we have not done the required health department perk tests and test holes yet, but that's something that will be required for the health permit. We'll be doing 56 test holes and 28 perk tests in this small area. So certainly something where we're going to continue to do a lot more soil evaluation. I think we will be meeting that need over the course of the project. The C2 requirement, again, we just try to keep the plan a little bit more simple. We do have the radii shown on the subdivision plan. However, if you'd like us also to show that information for the center line of the road layout on the C2 plan, we certainly can do that. Regarding the road plan and profile, again, I think that switching the drainage and utilities will answer many of these questions that were brought up regarding drainage and water line separation. Regarding section 342N5, requesting that we show drainage facilities in all details on the profile plan. I do just want to note, and I can skip over to the plans for a section here. We do have all required drainage information. We just did not include it on the road profile plan for ease of understanding. It's on a separate details plan, which, as you'll see, the drainage structures take up a good portion of the plan. There's extensive specifications, details, elevation, information on everything required for the drainage information. It's just not on the same plan as the profile. And again, that's just really for ease of review. Section 424, we certainly can confirm forward site distance. I'll jump back to the staff review. And then just the last comment, 463, I don't think we're able to get written approvals from any of the utility companies until we have a definitive subdivision plan that's been recorded at the registry. I don't think they're really going to provide us with any sort of information as to connecting to the lots until the lots have actually been created. It's certainly something that will be part of our plan as part of the permit approval process as we go forward. C4, the grading and drainage plan, I will make those corrections and additions per your request. C5, I will also make those additions and corrections per your request. C9, the landscape plan. Certainly we'll note that we've attempted to put in all the additional plantings that have been requested in previous staff reviews. We've added a lot of additional trees. We're showing at greater than, or shorter than I should say, 40-foot separation all the way along the road layout of both roads. Mature trees, we're proposing, I believe, oak and maple trees along the entire right-of-way section, which is a requirement of the subdivision rules and regulations. We're also providing buffer evergreen trees along lot 13, the section that's closest to Route 6A and kind of hovers up above 6A to provide a visual buffer from the road. And also shrubs and plantings in the areas around, obviously, the foundations, but also around the drainage structures that we're proposing adjacent to the roads. I think that certainly understanding, obviously, that there's a lot of grading involved in our site. You can see there's a lot of proposed grades around the road. We've taken, great effort to try to design a safe road that meets all the subdivision rules and regulations. We've lowered the max elevation from 10% to 8% per the planning board's previous request. But it's a sloping, steep site, and there's not really any way for us to avoid some amount of grading. So obviously there are portions of the site that will need to be cleared in order to allow changes of grade. We've done our best to make the road work with the existing grades, but there's limits to that, again, because the existing site is steeper than what the requirements are for a safe road.
If I could just jump in.
Go ahead. Yeah.
With regards to Kathy's last comment regarding additional native trees and shrubs, I just leaned into Christian, and we can accommodate some of those, which would make sense on particularly lots 12 and 11, 10, 9, and 8, and also 1, 2, 3, and then we'll take a look at 4, but 4 and 5 start bearing away, but certainly 3 on the west, and it looks like 5 on the east. We can incorporate, where we're grading, we can incorporate some, evergreen shrubs, some evergreen trees, which will screen each the abutter from the new houses and vice versa. Sorry about that.
No, appreciate it. A couple other notes regarding the landscape plan and natural features. The limit of work that we're setting does cut into our property lines in many cases. We've tried to keep it as tight as we can around the residential areas. We're fine with adding a condition to an approval, but really regardless of whether that condition is set, a plan for the approach before construction would be to stake out the limit of work line and have a site walk between the engineer, builder, contractor to determine if there are any significant trees that are nearby to the limit of work that can be maintained and can be restored, or sorry, I shouldn't say restored, but preserved. Obviously this is something that's in the best interest of the developer as well. We don't want to remove any trees that aren't necessary. So certainly around the edges of the property, we're certainly willing to look at saving additional trees that are inside of the limit of work as much as we can. And the final note I just want to note on this is, again, as Paul covered, this is a cluster subdivision. And the biggest benefit of a cluster subdivision is the density that we're able to do of clustering all the residential area into one portion of the property and then maximizing the amount of contiguous open space on the rest of the property. Comparing this to a standard subdivision plan, we'd have lots that are spaced out evenly across the entire lot and even extending down to the lower portion here. And you'd have small patches of isolated vegetation in between each lot. The goal of the cluster subdivision is to avoid that and to allow a large open natural space to remain. And as Paul noted, we've done that. We have over 200,000 square feet of open space that we're providing here. So, it's kind of a consequence of the density of the residential area that we're putting in that, there's limited amount of spaces in that particular area that we're able to, preserve a significant amount of trees. But in terms of replanting and in terms of preserving along the edges, that's certainly something that we're willing to do and would like to do. Anything else really? Paul covered, I think, just about everything here other than stormwater. So as Kathy has noted, we are certainly acknowledging we'll need to get a stormwater management permit from the Conservation Commission. We're not going to get started with the project in time. And we've reviewed those regulations and certainly can see that they're more stringent than the state's stormwater handbook requirements and the planning board's requirements. However, I want to note that our stormwater system as initially designed was also more stringent than the stormwater handbook requirement of the state or the planning board, both of which require designing to the 25-year storm for recharge. Our design already designs to the 100-year storm. Now, we do understand that there's some slight changes in the rainfall amounts from what we use to what the Conservation Commission will use. But our understanding from reviewing those regulations is that if we do not already meet all of the regulations that the stormwater management permit would require, we're 95% there. And certainly the adjustments we would be making would be on the margins in terms of small changes, in terms of sizing of swales, possibly the subsurface leaching facility, possibly adding a few small swales around some driveways and flat areas. But given that this is a more stringent approval that we'll be pursuing with the Conservation Commission, we're hoping that instead of kind of double dipping here, we can pursue that through the Conservation Commission in lieu of kind of going through those drainage issues here, only to that kind of then go through it again with the Conservation Commission. And certainly we'll be taking all of these comments that were put forward in the stormwater management permit and runoff into account as well. The traffic is, do you have something, John?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go over Bruce's comments on the sewage system. And, one of the things that we heard in the preliminary was the fact that we were partially within Bass River and the other half in Chase Garden Creek. I think it is Chase Garden Creek.
Barnstable Harbor /
And Barnstable, okay. Yeah. I knew I didn't have that right. So what we did do, we did a couple things. One, we proposed a sewer easement along the back sides of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Eventually this area will get sewered, supposedly. So what we've done is we've provided an easement on those 4, 5 lots because those lots sit below the road. So this way the owners would have an avenue to run a sewer main that would collect those 5 homes and then discharge out into to 6A. The other homes would all be run through sewer down the center of the 2 roads. So that was point number one I wanted to make. And the second point is, we did reposition the leaching facilities. So we're putting 9 homes into the Barnstable Harbor estuary, which 7.
7 and 7.
It is 7 and 7, I'm sorry. So 7 homes in the Barnstable Harbor area, while the rest in the Bass River. And I did give the board nitrogen loading calcs, and the Bass River estuary, which is the impaired estuary, where we're providing a loading level of less than 5 parts per million based on the Cape Cod Commission's nitrogen aggregation formula. So I just wanted to end with that. And I think Randy is still on the call. And I'd like to turn it over to Randy to talk about his report regarding traffic and the curb cut. And then we'll bring it back to the board, and just as you'd said.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, boy.
Okay, great. Good evening. I'm Randy Hart with VHB. We prepared the traffic assessment for the project. Our assessment was very specific. We looked at 3 things. We looked at safety in the immediate area of the proposed driveway. We looked at the traffic generation associated with the proposed project. And then we evaluated the site distance at the proposed site driveway along Route 6A. In terms of the safety analysis, we collected data from the files of Massachusetts Highway Department for the most recent 5 years of data, which was available. We did so at Route 6A at Hockonock Road, at Kenscomset Circle, and we also grabbed Outward Reach yesterday and provided that as a supplement to the board. The data shows that in the 5-year period at Hockonock Road, there were 1 to 2 accidents. And I say 1 to 2 because one of the 2 accidents was a single car accident, and the geocoding of it showed it to be away from the intersection, not at it, but in proximity to. So I included it in the table as a potential accident at that location, even though I don't think it was. At Kenscomset Circle, there were no accidents in the Mass DOT database. And then at Outreach, there were 2 in the 5-year period as well. All of the accidents that were shown were property damage only, so very minor in nature, no injuries whatsoever. And if you look at each location that had the accidents, it shows a yearly average of 0.4 per year, which is pretty low, which is obviously a very good thing. Kathy Williams had asked us to provide a crash rate calculation for her, and unfortunately I couldn't find the right data in order to provide that. But having looked at accident reports and doing the calculations for many, many years now, 0.4 on a yearly average is very low, and we're certain to be way below the Mass DOT average crash rate in District 5. So there's almost no question about that. In terms of the project itself, 14 lot unit subdivision, we use the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE trip generation manual, land use code 210, which is single family detached housing, to estimate the traffic associated with this project. And we look at 3 critical periods mostly. We look at the commuter periods, weekday morning from 7 to 9, weekday afternoon from 4 to 6 on a weekday. And then we look at Saturday midday 11 to 2 p.m. And if you look at the AM projections, it shows that the project would likely generate about 12 trips in total, 3 of which would be entering during that time frame, and 9 would be exiting. During the evening peak hour, a total of 16, with 10 entering and 6 exiting. And then Saturday midday would generate about 22 trips, with 12 entering and 10 exiting. So relatively minor traffic, but definitely new traffic to the area. In terms of the site distance, mind if I share my screen? Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Please.
Thank you. Oh, it says it's disabled.
Ben, can you enable that?
Oh, there it goes.
He's good, Chris.
So when we look at site distance, we look at it 2 different ways. We look at stopping site distance, and what stopping site distance is essentially the
Not-
person.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yes.
we're not seeing anything.
Oh, you're not seeing it. It says I'm sharing, huh? Let me try again. I'll stop and start.
Well, I was seeing it online, so that was good. you-
I'm gonna try again.
All right.
There we go. Okay, it says I'm sharing again. Does anyone see it?
No,
Again, I see it online. Is it on one of the TV screens, the two screens in the hearing room?
nope.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I apologize. I'll try to just use my words to help you understand what I'm talking about. So when we look at site distance, we look at two different things. We look at stopping site distance, which is essentially the person that's on Route 6A, the main line, you know, how much distance they need in order to see something in the roadway, perceive it, react, and stop. And stopping site distance is the minimum that you should meet in order to consider a new driveway or a new side street. It's AASHTO guideline that says stopping site distance is the minimum. The intersection site distance is something else we look at as well, and that's as you come out the driveway, looking left and looking right to see, you know, how far can you see a car in advance of the intersection. ISD is what it's called, and it's desired to meet that, but a lot of times you cannot. And so stopping site distance is the minimum that is absolutely required. With the proposed driveway in the current location being as far to the west from the curb as we can get it, and aligned with Hockanong Road, we meet the stopping site distance for both eastbound and westbound travel. We in fact exceed it under existing conditions. And we meet the ISD looking left, but we don't meet it looking right because of the curve in the roadway. And one thing we're doing to improve on that condition and to even improve further on the stopping site distance is suggesting to do clearing along the entire site frontage. And we have a lot of frontage, which is really helpful. So we can definitely improve the sight lines for ourselves. That'll improve it for Ken Concept Circle, which is, you know, 200 and some feet to our left. So all the sight lines for both users in this particular area. And while I believe it was the town planner that suggested that, you know, we should meet the ISD in both conditions, I don't believe with opening this up that we're going to be able to achieve it. We're going to get a lot closer than we are today, but I don't think the profile of the road is going to allow us to quite get there. But again, we meet the stopping site distance and exceed it significantly with the clearing. So we meet what is required of us in terms of safe and adequate site distance. That's a quick summary of the transportation work. And, you know, I know people have a lot of questions, so I'll end there. And if you need me to try to answer any questions this evening, I'm happy to try to do so.
Thank you.
I think that's pretty much our presentation. Again, we'd like to just let you know we're here to answer any questions. Hopefully we can answer them. And if you have any concerns, obviously we want to know about those as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Kathy, would you like to run through your planner report?
Sure. A lot of the planner report was the comments that you kind of ran through a little bit. But also included in the memo in the packet is the special permit process and the criteria. Just to let the board know, as a special permit, you would need 2/3 vote, or 5 out of 7 of you would need to vote for it to approve it. It outlines the criteria for approval for a definitive subdivision. That is just a majority vote of 4 out of 7. And the criteria is governed by the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land, which you all have a copy of. But they are asking for, I believe, 5 waivers. But the only one that's only the most substantial, really the only substantial one, is related to the 400-foot intersection. The others are rather perfunctory. With regard to the actual comments, I would appreciate if you could provide written responses to the staff comments so that we have, you went through it fairly quickly and with different people, so it's hard to follow through, but if you could provide those written responses, that would be great. The only thing I would bring to the attention of the board is you did have some conditions in your preliminary approval for the, certificate of approval for the preliminary subdivision. I think the first 3, they kind of addressed. Obviously, there's updated staff comments that they're addressing. They provided a request for the specific waivers. They have looped the water main by connecting it to the water main along the utility easement. As far as future sewering, they did incorporate the 15-foot wide easement behind lots 1 through 5 as requested. I just think that taking into consideration all of the things that you have going on in the roadway, actually laying out that future sewer line within your roadway so you can make sure that you have the proper separations from the water main. You want to make sure you have 10-foot separations from that. So that was my comment there, just making sure that when you do it, maybe you need to move some of the drain manholes that are in the center line off a little in order to have a good direct line for your sewer. So just taking that into consideration if the rest of them are going to be within the roadway. And then condition 6 had to do with the road slopes. They did, as they mentioned, change the grade on Miracle Way from 10% down to 8%. But one of the other criteria was to reevaluate the road grade on Miracle Way to soften the grade at the Route 6A intersection for vehicle stacking. I believe that came from Brad from some previous subdivisions as far as having more of a flat grade as you're stacking up to the intersection. I know you have a certain distance that's 2%, and then down below it gets to 5.5%. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention to the board. I don't know whether it's really an issue, but I just wanted to let you know that that was a condition with regard to that. Some of the things with regard to the miscellaneous comments on C3, those are criteria of things that are required by the rules and regulations. So if you're not going to do it, and it may be a very good justifiable reason not to do it, then those are actually things that would need to be formally waived so that you don't need it. It might make sense not to have certain information if it's clearer to be done in a different way. But all those sections are things that are required. Sometimes in the past, what we've done with regard to the utilities is prior to releasing any of the lots, you have to provide that information. So that might be something that we can look into that. I'm really glad to hear that you're willing to add some additional landscaping. I think that'll be helpful to the abutters. I mean, there's some taller trees, but you know, that lower level there where you'd be looking through, would be nice to have a little bit of coverage there for the neighbors. So the maintenance covenants haven't had a chance to look at, but I'm glad those are submitted and we can take a look at those. One of the things that's required by the rules and regulations, I think, is an erosion control plan. You're going to need to be submitting one. I think you just referenced a future SWIP that was going to be done, but this is something where you actually have to have a plan, the construction sequence, and that type of thing. It should be submitted to the planning board. You have to prepare it for the stormwater permit anyway, but I think that's information that the planning board should also have to meet their regulations. I had some comments. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at the stormwater. I just wanted to send you in the right direction with regard to the NOAA Atlas, and then maybe some of the drainage areas for the main systems that didn't seem to be covered from some of the individual lots. So those are things that I think that you should just be sure that you're addressing properly before you submit your stormwater permit to the Conservation Commission. And I think we want to be sure that we're not increasing any stormwater runoff off our property onto any of the butters. I know there's always a concern about that. We want to make sure that that's not something that's going to be happening. With regard to the crash data or the actual traffic assessment, I think it's important, Randy didn't talk about it, but they are asking for a waiver from the 400 foot, but there is a position where they could actually meet the 400 foot from Hockanum and outward reach and not need the waiver, but based on the response from Randy, it would actually be less safe to go in that particular location. So it's a case where they could go in a location and meet the requirements and not have a waiver, or go in a different location, get the waiver, and it sounds as though based on the information that it would be considered safer from a traffic standpoint. So I just wanted to bring that up. There was also some comments from Amanda Lima, who's the town engineer. I don't think any of those are too detailed, but she did make some suggestions with regard to super elevation. You should respond to those in some fashion in writing, and then she'll evaluate those. With regard to the perk tests, I'm a little concerned that there's no perk tests on this property at all. I realize that you did do a bunch of test hits and looked at the soils, but you're required to do perk tests at the drainage according to the rules and regulations. I know that you're going to be doing a lot also in order to be able to get approval for your septic systems, but I'm concerned that there's no perk tests whatsoever. Now you could easily schedule it and get something going there, and I would highly recommend it. Otherwise, you would need some type of waiver from the perk test requirement in the drainage areas. And then just Bruce Murphy the director of the health department, there was no approval of the subdivision. He has comments on things that need to be required, and you are going to obviously need to meet all of the state and local health regulations, Title V, with no variances. So if you go out there later and you find that you can't meet it, then you're not building on that lot. And it's a little bit difficult when you're having these small cluster subdivisions because you have a small area to work with. If you were the southern part of town, I wouldn't be as worried about it, but your soils are a little bit different north of 6. And then he did note that the subdivision is not located in the Aquifer Protection District or state nitrogen sensitive area of Zone 2 or of contribution for the public water systems. So it's not required to conform to the nitrogen loading limitations. So just people know that the current regulations that this project is being governed by basically requires Title V. Which is what they're proposing versus something that's more enhanced. They did work to try and move more of the septic systems to the nitrogen sink or the northern watershed versus sending it to the Bass River. But there is also a note that is on the actual definitive subdivision plan and is noted by Bruce as no dwelling or unit shall be built on any lot without first securing from the health department that disposal system required for installation. So that's something that your typical response. So I think that's a quick overview of all of the various staff comments that have been done.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, I'd like to open it up to questions, initial questions or comments from planning board members. And I hate to do this to you, Chris, but would you like to start?
I don't have any questions at this
Okay,
time. Thank you.
Susan?
I actually have several questions. The safety intersection issue. This is probably clarification. You could go to 400 feet, but that would make it less safe. Is that what your testimony is? What does that mean? How does that work?
I think what, to be fair to Randy, he did not, he reviewed the site distances that we have, the location of the curb cut that we're now currently showing. If we were to move that curb cut to the east,
Correct.
we then move it closer to the eastern boundary of the lot. So right now, we are positioning it as far east as we can.
Right.
I'm sorry, far west as we can,
Right.
and taking advantage of the slope easement
Okay.
and clearing.
Right.
If we were to position the curb cut here
Uh-huh.
to maintain the 400 feet
Right.
from, the Concomsit, thank you.
Mhm.
We do not have that ability to continue with the line of sight going east because we run out of property. So that's why we opted for this location. If you'd like us to enhance that narrative, staff has asked for written comments and we can ask Randy to take a look at what the complications would be by moving it east and just confirm and document that situation.
I think that would be helpful. So if you do move it east, you lose, what did you say? You lose the sight line to the
Yeah, you can
east?
see how we have a nice long sight line ability to clear that shoulder.
Right.
By moving the road over into this location,
Mhm.
we lose that ability to trim any vegetation over here.
Can I just add to that, John, that, it's always an advantage to try and align side streets up whenever you can. And in this case, it just happened to work out quite well. What you really want to avoid at all costs is having 3 driveways or 3 side streets, in very close proximity to each other, but, offset completely, because it adds to the number of conflict points along the roadway system and it gets confusing to motorists. It's less safe because of that, but it's also less safe because of the sightline issues that John just described.
Okay, but if you could do a simulation, just pretend you're moving it and see what the result is so that not only the neighborhood, but the board can check that off and say, yes, we looked at it and we concurred with the conclusion that it would be less safe to move it toward the east. I think that would be
Sure. Well, we
Oh.
can, you've asked for written comments, written
Okay.
responses, so we'll have Randy include that
Okay.
component in his part.
Also, I noticed that there were, did you get any comments from Mass DOT?
Yes, what we did do is we did file the curb cut permit as it's shown on the plan with the Mass DOT,
Right.
specifically to see if there are any red flags from their perspective
Right.
in the location. So we were able to get to a level of 75% review from the DOT.
Right.
And I did include their last comment that all they're really waiting for to issue a permit would be the blessing of the local authorities.
Okay, and they're aware of the 400-foot issue and all that?
They are, I don't know if they're aware of I don't think they're aware of the local requirement.
Mhm.
That's not their requirement. But they are aware of the 40 some odd signatures that have been gathered by the
Right.
abutters. Those were submitted to the DOT as well by the abutters.
Right, I think in some of those comments, the 400 feet was mentioned. I would hope Mass DOT is aware of the 400-foot requirement. If it isn't, I think you should make them aware of it. So that, I think that's important that the state understand that we have a requirement and that.
And staff had asked for did they have any, large comments that we've addressed? And their comments were specifically to do type of material, depth of pavement, type of dense underlayment of under the pavement, stuff like that. Nothing with, they didn't change the alignment or anything
Okay.
like that.
So it was more the building materials and
It's
things
more the
like that.
material, and we have that, and we can provide that as part of our response.
Okay. Two other comments. One was, I think you mentioned that you would actually walk the site and start looking at trees that you might be able to save. I'm a huge tree person. Is there any way you could incorporate some neighbor comments in that walkthrough so that the neighbors could participate in either looking at what you've identified as things worth saving or things that you decided to take down? Is there any way that the abutters could participate in that conversation? Not that they would have a right of refusal, but just comments.
I mean, input is always great. Was willing to talk to the neighbors. I mean,
I mean, they live there, so I think they probably have a really good sense of what looks great in the fall, of things that are,
yeah. I mean,
foliage and things like that.
I-
I think it would be helpful because it's a big issue for some of it's a big issue for me. I hate to see clear cut. I think every tree should be saved if possible, even if you have to redesign certain things to save the trees. So if there's any way that the neighborhood, either as an association group or something, could participate in that discussion, I think that would be certainly helpful, at least in my view. And then the last thing was the septic system. This came up before. I think our great friend Tom Barron brought it up before. Why Title V and not Title VI? Tell me again.
I remember him talking about Title
'Cause
VI.
I know your answer was we're only required to do 5, and that's great. That's like saying, you're the thinnest kid at fat camp. But what I think, and it will be a while before, I think it's going to be a while before that part of our town gets connected to the system. So I'd be all for Title VI because I think that's the way to go. Title V is fine, but I think this is a brand new development. There are, as you repeatedly said, there are big drainage issues. So tell me again why you can't do Title VI?
Well, as I said to the gentleman during the preliminary review, I don't know what Title VI means. Title V is 310 CMR 15.000. That is the state sanitary code. Title V is always referred to.
Mhm.
Before Title V, it was called Chapter 78 or something like that, and that's a long time ago. But I don't know what Title VI is. Now, there are other things that people do to septic systems when they're required to do them. And that's usually when they're in a nitrogen sensitive area,
Mhm.
if it's an area that's served by private wells or within a zone 2, or when you're dealing with a coastal environment or you're on the water, fresh inland or coastal. So we are doing Title V. They are fully compliant. We're not obligated to do any enhanced treatment, which it's also referred to as IA technology, innovative and enhanced, or advanced, excuse me. We're not required to do it, But if this was, just to take another look at the subdivision, the lot itself is 660,000 square feet. If this was in the middle of a zone 2 of a municipal water supply well field, we could by right install 66 bedrooms,
Mhm.
1 bedroom per 10,000 square
I
feet.
know, we had this conversation before, but you still haven't answered the question. Well, let me put it another way. How much more would it cost you to do Title VI instead of Title V? I'm sure there's a cost associated with
There is-
upgrading the.
Yeah,
it-
there is a cost, and not only the actual component of the treatment works is an initial cost, probably, anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000
Per unit?
per unit.
Okay.
And you also have O&M per unit.
Mhm.
It's not as if this is going into a centralized sewage
Right.
system and you have one one treatment process, one treatment plant, and one operation contract. You would have, the Davenport companies would have 14 small treatment systems and 14 O&Ms. And at $2,000 a piece per year for O&M, you're talking about a sizable amount of money.
Right, but nitrogen loading is a sizable problem. Anyway, I still, again, I'm gonna reference our friend Tom Barron. He was concerned about it. I'm concerned about it. If there's, I know you don't want to do it because it's expensive. But I think it's an investment worth making. I personally think it's an investment worth making. I think it would make it a better project. I think it would make it a 21st century project as opposed to a 20th century project. It would be environmentally better. It might not be nitrogen sensitive now, but 10 years ago, Lewis Bay wasn't nitrogen sensitive, and now it is. This is going to be a big, expensive project, and I think you should consider making the investment. Maybe you could get like a discount for 14 houses as opposed to 2. But I do think it's worth. You might come back with the same answer, but I do think it's worth. I think it's worth making. I think Yarmouth
fairness,
needs to.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
In fairness, we'll revisit that situation as far as adding IA technology and seeing.
Because technology, one of the nice things about technology is a lot of it is coming down in cost. The more you use it, the more it's explored, it gets cheaper to use. There may be something that will be cheaper in the future, and I do think it will make it a better project, and certainly would be better for the environment. And if people are going to be spending that kind of money on a house, it'd be nice to have, as a selling point, you've got the most up-to-date environmental technology dealing with I think it's a selling point, quite frankly. But, and I'm sure if you do it, you'll pass it right on to the new owners.
Well,
So,
Kathy, you have a comment?
I guess my comment is that you are on the divide.
Mhm.
So only 7 of the units are actually going towards the
Right.
Nitrogen impaired
Right.
watershed. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be
all of them.
14. It could maybe only be.
And then you could offer as an option to the other 7, if they'd like to have the spiffy, up-to-date, environmentally safe 21st century system. So anyway, that's it. Yeah, I don't want to no more on
Go
that.
on for a long time.
No, we don't.
We'll
We
stop
could,
you.
and time is of the essence. I'm done.
Anything else,
I'm done.
Susan?
I think that's it. We did trees, we did the septic system, we did safety. Okay, that's it.
Will?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I respect the hours and hours and hours and hours, and I'll stop saying hours, of work that's been put in by even fine folks and the nice gentleman up on the screen. Did you consider not having a curb cut on 6A for this project?
Yes, we did look at Eileen Way, which is a road that abuts on the southeast corner. The road is improved. It's paved up to about 60 feet, 50, 60 feet away from the subdivision. And then in that general corner, the road is around elevation about 46, and you have elevation within 80 feet of that of close to 60, 62. So we do have quite a bit of earth on that. It rises up quite a bit, and which would mean a substantial cut of grade coming off Eileen Way, as well as potential improvements to the actual width of Eileen Way on that
Yes.
particular section. So we did look at that. It would change the entire, layout of the subdivision, of course. And, we did have quite a bit of discussion on that the last time in the preliminary. And I think that, even with the entrance onto 6A, I think is, from a grade point of view, works much better, and the lot layout works much better. But we opted to do 6A. We did look at Eileen Way, and because of the grading, the improvements, and just the change of the entire layout, we opted to do 6A.
Okay, and I can understand that whichever entrance you chose to present was going to present concerns amongst the abutters. So I recognize that me discussing Eileen Way is not an attempt to downplay any of the issues involved here as it relates to traffic and safety, of which I am still incredibly uncomfortable with. So I just wanted to discuss, how wide ranging you looked. I appreciate you sharing that information, and I'll reserve more comments and when we get more substantive, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Jim, welcome, by the way.
Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
nice to have you here.
Nice to
Newest
be-
member of the board.
I have a lot to digest. I've read a lot of this to catch up with everybody else. I really don't have anything else to add. I get a pretty good understanding of why the road would be placed across from Hockanum Road. I drive that road often, so I can see where clearing that corner would make it a little bit easier for line of sight for even Hockanum and Kennecumpsett. But other than that, I'm still trying to catch up with everything else, and I really have no additional comments at this time.
I have a couple of questions. Last time that we met, I believe I asked the question. I understand that these homes are to be rental homes. Is that correct? It's still the same. They will be rented. And so the legal documents that we received, the homeowners association and the like, Christian, your name is prominent in all of that. The owner of all of the units will be Davenport Companies, I presume, and that homeowners association is what's represented there. Okay, so they will be rentals. Secondly, I had a question. Again, it goes to the exit roadway, which I think is the one concern. The 400-foot waiver is the one waiver request that's obviously received a lot of attention. The others, as Kathy has mentioned, are relatively minor, and I trust that they can be addressed properly by you, or that you can convince us that we've taken a position that we need to adjust. But I believe those other waivers are going to be not as difficult to consume, if you will. But the 400 feet is a concern, and I'm looking to the west to the distance between the exit roadway for the project and I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, Kennecumpsett. I took a ride, I've taken a ride over there a couple of times to see coming in and getting out of Route 6 from both of the roadways on either side. And it is difficult. I know in the VHB report, I think, Randy, you mentioned it's 237 feet from Kennecumpsett to the exit.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And again, you accelerate to get out of there, and then all of a sudden you're at your entrance to yours. So that remains a concern. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to think about how you might be able to move it a little bit east, even though Randy would advise us that more offset intersections are not a good thing necessarily. But that is of concern. But you've indicated a willingness to take a look at that, and we appreciate that. I too have an issue with the landscaping plan as shown on your original drawings, which we received earlier. One dogwood tree upset me just a little bit. And I'm glad to hear that you're making some adjustments there with additional landscaping at the plan, on the plan. I don't think I have any other initial questions on this. Kathy, do you have any initial questions?
I think the only thing is if there's still some interest with regard to Eileen, I went down there and I drove out. Outward Reach has a dip in it. The site distances from Eileen onto Outward Reach is horrible. So I think if there's any consideration to that in any way, I think it's actually less safe, because when I went there, traffic was going very, very fast. And I just couldn't see. There was actually a car in the dip and it was like right up there before I realized it. And obviously looking right, the site distance is poor, but obviously it could be improved with some trimming of some vegetation. But for your further evaluation, that might be worth you guys taking a look with regard to the site distances that are available due to the vertical changes in Outward Reach versus the horizontal, which you have on Route 6.
And Brad Goodwin, who's joining us remotely. Brad?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board, for coming before us today and speaking. I'm going to hold off most of my comments until the public. The only thing I'd like to add is to what Will brought up about Eileen. I went down as well to take a look, and as the applicant said, the steep rise from Eileen to the top of the subdivision, which it's just immense. It's just a wall of earth going straight up. So I didn't think that was applicable at all, and I didn't even think about pulling out of Outward and getting back on 6A. I didn't have a problem. I must have gotten a lucky break, but I too thought it would be a more sloping, easy, yes, bring it in, but I face with a wall of earth. So I don't think they had a choice but to do a curb cut on 6A. I'm going to hold my other two comments about runoff and fire until after the public speaks.
Okay. Then I'll move to the next item, Kathy. If you want to review the written comments we've received.
Certainly. The planning board members all have the complete letters. I'm just going to briefly summarize them for the public so you understand the comments that have been received. 7 written comments were received. We received an email from Doug and Catherine Hefty, who live on 6A, who objects to the location of the proposed curb cut on Route 6A and requests that the waiver regarding street spacing be denied. Safer access could be provided through Outward Reach and Eileen Street. Location across from Hockanum creates an unsafe condition, especially with vehicles from each direction vying for entrance onto busy 45-mile-per-hour Route 6A. If access off Route 6A is absolutely necessary, should be relocated east of Hockanum. We received another letter from Margaret Falbo, who lives on Kemcosset Circle, noting that she's opposed to the curb cut on Route 6A and requests that the curb cut be denied. Adding another road access in close proximity to Kemcosset and across from Hockanum will make it more difficult to exit and increase chances of motor vehicle accidents. Removal of native vegetation and tremendous grading to improve sight distance will permanently disfigure and disturb a section of historic Route 6A. The proposed shrubs at the entrance to Miracle Way may impede the sight distance for those leaving Kemcosset. Suggested safer access is off Eileen Road. Concerned that the proposed sewer easement behind lots 1 through 4 will directly affect her property and requests that easement reduction from 20 feet to 15 feet be denied. With heavy grading and tree removal, fears stormwater runoff will be directed to the homes on Kemcosset Circle and may also impact their existing septic systems. And lastly, more should be done to provide landscaping/screening for lots abutting Kemcosset Circle and suggests planting new evergreens in addition to the 25-foot natural buffer, as some trees are in poor condition. Received an inquiry from Jocelyn Howard, and she was inquiring to be sure that the access to the subdivision would not be off of Eileen Street. Another comment email from Thomas Orton, who lives on Kemcosset, requests a 200-foot wide buffer along the Kemcosset Circle's lots. Location for entry from Route 6A is much too close and will create a very dangerous intersection, and loss of habitat is very sad for Yarmouth. Another comment email from Janice Lyman, a 9 Kemcosset Circle, requests a reconsideration of the amount of clear cutting of the forested lot, suggests leaving a buffer zone of trees on the periphery for the environment to buffer noise and aesthetics. 1 tree per lot is a token gesture, not a replacement for what is being lost. Planned access location would create a hazardous intersection and requests a reconsideration of the access onto 6A. It's currently difficult to turn onto 6A. When turning right, need to accelerate quickly to join flow of traffic and would meet accelerating directly towards the exit for this development. The sixth email came from Irene Payne, noting that the 14 four-bedroom houses could have 8 people per house, which will generate a hefty volume of sewage. We'll be adding nitrogen to Mill Pond, the headwaters to Bass River, which is already impaired. Additional nitrogen is sending the numbers in the wrong direction and adding to the problem. Suggests placing the septic systems for the homes closer to Route 6A, where the flow is directed away from Mill Pond. This will also allow for easier hookup to future sewer lines. She lives near Mill Pond and is concerned about the nitrogen loading from the septic systems and the resulting algae growth and low oxygen levels. And lastly, received a letter from Dick Neitz from Neitz Realty, who is the agent for the owner. He talks about the petitioner opted for the 14 homes to help meet the demand for housing rather than looking at a 40B housing development, which would be much denser. The petitioner is planning to pay the $289,000 payment to meet affordable housing requirements. The lots are not in the Aquifer Protection District, and delays in approval of this project will have significant and detrimental impact to the buyer seller in the needs of our community for housing. And all proceeds from the sale will stay locally and go directly to St. Pius Church in South Yarmouth, which has done good work for our community for the past 60 years.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. I'd like to now open up this hearing to the public. For those who would like to speak, if you could raise your hand, I'll try to identify you in some kind of order. I see you gentlemen standing. If you could come forward, please. Thank you. Your name?
Good evening. My name is Rick Bishop. I'm a Yarmouthport resident. I'm also the executive director of the Friends of Bass River. And this evening, I'm not really here to speak directly against the development, but however, I am here to strongly speak against how the applicant is handling its wastewater. In the last 2 years, the Friends of Bass River has invested nearly $700,000 on planning and design for a project to significantly improve the water quality at the Upper Bass River headwaters. MEP, the Mass Estuaries Program, calls for a 73% reduction in nitrogen. And this project, as stated, will add nitrogen to our project. The front page of the Boston Globe today talks very definitely about alternative septic systems as a solution to this problem. And I would strongly ask the planning board to consider that as part of this program. I'd like to share this article with the board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Get the whole
Now-
paper?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we can read about the Celtics too.
Yeah, yes.
Can I have the
Sports
comments?
section?
In the front row here? Sure.
My name is Richard Gegenwath from Yarmouthport. I'm the chairman of the Old Kings Highway Committee. And it wasn't clear to us at all when I reviewed this 2 years ago of what kind of houses were going to go there. But
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
yes,
Check them out in the hall here.
oh, yeah.
Going up the stairs.
Competition with a vacuum cleaner here.
Oh, God.
There you go.
That's better.
Much
That's
better.
better.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Right. When I reviewed the plan 2 years ago, there was no mention of what the size of the houses were or rental, which didn't add to the picture at that point. But Old Kings Highway has to approve of each and every house that goes in there. And so we'd be looking for a design that would be compatible with the area. And also we have a large percentage of the houses nowadays are looking towards solar energy. And the layouts shown on these diagrams there's only like 3 houses that are in directionality sitting on the plots that would work for solar. So 2 years ago, I recommended that all the houses in here be looked at from that point of view. And you don't have to put just simple rectangles on each lot. Some could be T-shaped, some could be L-shaped. what I see here is they're all projected to be simple rectangles pointing with their front looking at the street, which is not necessary in Old Kings Highway. A lot of people do that when they're laying out houses, make sure that the front door is looking at the street, but they can be creative, and we would be looking for some variation so the development doesn't look like a real cookie cutter arrangement. So if the builders, the designers can do something in that regard, be helpful.
Thank you. Come on up.
My name is Brian Dudley. I live at 7 Sophie Ann Drive, which is off of Hockanum. And before I offer my comments or critiques, I would like to come to the defense of my friend, Mr. O'Reilly, and say that there is no such thing as Title VI. It is a term that has been coined by some advocates of enhanced septic treatment systems, but it has no official recognition. We operate in the Commonwealth under the requirements of Title V. So I just thought that was an important clarification, and I wanted to clear up any confusion in that regard. I have a couple points that I'd like to present in terms of my concerns about this project, is that like many others, I do have concerns about the impacts of having a new intersection directly across from Hockanum. I have lived in that neighborhood off and on from 1978 to 92, and then full-time from 92 on. And while the accident statistics may be minimal, I can tell you that it is always difficult to take a left-hand turn out of Hockanum, and even with the improved sight lines, I'm not convinced that that is going to have any significant improvement in that difficulty. And honestly, I think the reason why there are so few accidents there is that those of us who live there know how difficult it is, and we are extra careful when we take any left-hand turn out of there. I realize that, an alternate entrance from Eileen does present significant construction challenges, but I do not believe that they are insurmountable. And I am a recently retired engineer, so I do have some knowledge in these areas. And as I said, it is more challenging, but it is not insurmountable. With respect to wastewater, I am glad to see that 7 of the lots at least are going to be in Chase Garden Creek. The systems will be in Chase Garden Creek, where there currently is no impairment, documented impairment, as shown by the estuaries project reports. However, I was wondering if there has been any consideration of providing a shared system for the 7 lots that are in the Bass River watershed, such that the wastewater could be collected in individual septic tanks and then transported to the vacant lots in the open space near 6A. And I think that there are some disposal technologies such as drip irrigation that would have minimal impact on land clearing that potentially could be utilized. And while those are not necessarily enhanced treatment systems, it would get the wastewater outside the impacted watershed and into a watershed that does not currently exceed its assimilative capacity. And to that point, I would also like to add that even if you were to provide enhanced treatment in the 7 lots that are in the Bass River watershed, they're still contributing nitrogen to Bass River. I recognize, based on Mr. O'Reilly's calculations, and I have no reason to question those. He's done his usual thorough and professional job in presenting them. But the fact is, Bass River is impaired. It's beyond its assimilative capacity. And it doesn't matter if you're adding 500 pounds of nitrogen or 500 ounces of nitrogen. Additional nitrogen is additional nitrogen. And if we can avoid that in any manner, and I think consideration could be given to providing some sort of community system that directs everything to the Chase Garden Creek watershed, then that would be a beneficial outcome. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Patrick Sullivan. I live at 38 Hockanum Road. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask you a couple questions first, and it's just a yes or no answer. So you treat every applicant that comes before this board fair and impartial, is that correct?
I would like to think so, yes.
Okay. And one of your top priorities on this board, I would hope, is safety, is that correct?
We have many priorities.
One of
Safety
your
is,
top ones is safety, is that correct? Yes or no?
I don't, sir, I'm not sure I'm in a position right now to list for you the top 10 priorities.
No, I just asked about safety.
Safety is important, of course it
Okay,
is.
thank you. So I was on Yarmouth Fire Department for 30 years as a full-time firefighter EMT. I've gone to several major accidents at that. I don't care what this engineer that was hired by a Davenport company said. I'm not sure if they were fatalities, but there were extrications, many. I was the guy that got the street light at Hockanum Road. It was dark when I moved in. That road is a nightmare. It's not perpendicular with Route 6A. When you're coming from Dennis, you have to, they're right on your butt. And the posted speed is 45. They're going way above that. Both directions, okay? In the summertime, traffic backs up even before summer, routinely with no road work or anything from Union Street gas station past Hockanum Road. So it's ironic that they're naming this road Miracle Way because they're gonna need one coming across. And by the way, their engineer, traffic engineer said, he forgot to say, looking left, right, how about across the street? We'll be coming out of there. And by the way, we have no other way to go. There's 50 homes in there. If an incident happens, and a crash is the crash, one crash is too many, okay? If an incident happens there, we have no other way to get out, okay? Same with Concert Circle. Did you also have my petition with 70 names on it? It wasn't 40, it was 70, okay? Do you have a copy of that in the file?
If you've sent it in to us, sir, we have it.
I did.
During the
December of
preliminary.
2020, I sent it in.
That was for the preliminary hearing.
That's right. But it's for, in regards to your earlier decisions granting this. Okay, so we had, there's no way they can change the grade that they want, do whatever they want. They cannot make the road safe. A curve is a curve. The speed will not change. The state said that they would mirror your decision. If you say no, then they will say no. But if you got this road, there's going to be repercussions and impact all who travel that roadway. And by the way, coming in off of Eileen Street, so what? They have to move a little fill. And 16 years ago, Mr. Davenport built 2 big houses behind my home. He brought in $40,000 worth of fill to build these houses. So believe me, he can do anything. And that, if they go off of Eileen, and your concern was taking it out left on Elwood Reach, they don't have to go left on Elwood Reach. They can go up to Nobska. They can go to Halliard if they want to take the left. They may be going to Dennis. You can go down Eileen Street all the way and come on to Setauket Road. If you want to take a right to go to South Yarmouth, you come out of Eileen, you take a right onto Elwood Reach, a right onto Freeboard Lane, or right onto Clinton, brings you up to the top of Margaret Joseph, which goes right into Cobb Ave, and that comes onto Ware Road. So there's many different ways, and that would not impact anyone that uses that Route 6A. But this will have a lasting impact, and they cannot make it safe, period. I don't care what they say. I don't know when this, I heard the traffic study was done. When was it done? In December? Was it done in the summer? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Whatever they say, they cannot change the road. The road is the way it is. And believe me, they're going way above 45 miles an hour. And I'm asking you tonight to make the right decision as a board. It's unsafe. I'm talking from a public safety perspective. I went to many collisions there. There's always something happening there. It's unfair to the residents that live in Concert Circle and Hockanum Road. And off of Hockanum Road, there's Conservation, Whistler, Sophie Ann. There's many other roads off of there. And remember what I said, we can't go any other way. So if there's something there, that wouldn't have to be if they came off of Eileen. The impact off Eileen, the traffic is not going to be going like it is on 6A. And like I said, you don't know where people are going. If they have to take that left, they can, but they can go many different ways. Do you have any questions for me?
I do not, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Brendan. I live on Route 6A. My house kind of backs up to Hockanum, kind of across from Lot 13 on the map. I just want to piggyback on what Patrick was saying. I have to pull out onto Route 6A every day, going to work. And it's hard, I mean, I'm on the opposite side of the street, but it's a very difficult place to pull out. You can't clear cut that enough. It could be an open field and people are just flying in either direction. I mean, I live there with my wife and my 5 children, and it's like an everyday struggle to get out on that road. And there's really no safe way to cut Route 6A in that little section, in my opinion, to make it really feasible and make it safe. I mean, yeah, you could stagger the road from Hockanum. And then, like he was saying, that makes it more unsafe because then you have 3 different roads piling out, trying to take right, left. I mean, it's, I'm staggered from Hockanum. I back up to it, and it's difficult for me. And I'm, I consider myself a pretty good driver. So that's really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Patrick's comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Yes, in the front row.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
Hi, I live on Outward Reach.
Your name, please?
Ann Marquardt. And, I just think it's going to be really hard to make everybody happy here, but I think that the safety issue being on Outward Reach, people are cutting through from 6A, cutting through, basically to avoid the intersection up at Union Street. People are flying down our road. I understand that Hockanum can't, has only one way out. We do have other options, but the grade going down Outward Reach down to Freeboard Lane is really very dangerous at the intersection of Eileen. The other question that I had was about rentals. For these houses, are they supposed to be year-round rentals or are they vacation homes?
Or both.
I'd like to direct that to the applicant.
Year-round.
Thank you. Yeah, anyone else?
Someone
Oh,
over there,
yeah,
over there.
okay, I see you.
The podium is
Sort
in
of.
our eye line.
Couldn't see.
Sorry.
I can't really,
Yeah, there you go.
I was at the Youth Climate Summit today in, that the Audubon
I'm
puts
sorry to
on.
interrupt you, sir. Your name, please?
I'm Jim Wolf. I live on way the heck over on Gooseneck Road, which is impacted in this, but it's my comments more have to do with the septic systems and the nitrogen loading. And so my wife is Irene Payne, who already submitted a written comment. The town is working at cross purposes. The largest construction project in the town's history is under development right now. It's a $350 million plus program. I did ask in a written comment before, or I got an answer before about when is phase 4 of the sewerage going to be done, because, and I listened tonight to people talking about how in the future, the houses can be hooked up to our sewers. Well, we're talking 40 or 50 years into the future. Let's be real about sewering over there. It's not the highest priority. So what we have is we have a very polluted water body. And I think that even directing the stuff into Chase, that's repeating what got us to here, because Chase is going to be impacted. You know, even if you're talking about the 7 in the back, you're talking about 28 bedrooms, possibly 56 people. I mean, you know, I'm not getting into the safety. It's just the nitrogen loading in the Bass River. I would like to see our planning board and our town and our Department of Health and the developer figure out a way to go net zero into the Bass River. But I would also like to see them figure out a way not to dump everything into Chase. And so I think it's a meaningful thing. I'm sitting here and listening to waiver this and waiver that. I'm a business person. I'm the sustainability director at Cape Air. Giving waivers when there's something that you want is not a business practice. Getting waivers when you're a business is a business practice. So I would like to see, you know, a really firm stand on the part of the town regarding the Bass River. One of the things you're supposed to be considering is impact to the, you know, character, the quality of life of our town. The lifeblood of our town is the Bass River. There are ways that you can have zero net nitrogen impact on both. I'm not talking about state regulations. I'm talking about, you know, a business is coming to you and you have the right to issue waivers. I'm saying get hard, town, and get fair developers. These developers, but all developers, are part of what we have now in the Bass River. I'm sure there have been other developments by this developer and others that have contributed to our current situation. Title V is not good enough for the Bass River. So what can be done? We can look at some kind of a shared system. And if you're going to reach net zero, you're going to have to include some of the houses in the surrounding neighborhood on that system. You're going to have to add them in, reduce their nitrogen too, and get to a place where this development has gone net zero or below in terms of nitrogen into our vital estuaries. And so I'd like to see everybody get together, not have it be sort of like a hard-ass business negotiation, to figure out how we can do that. Of course, we need residences. I have no problem with that. Secondly, relative to the OKH, as a sustainability director, I look at all elements of our buildings at airports and stuff. And the point about situating houses to maximize solar is a very good point. And I look at those rectangles on those lots. I don't know why they're set that way. In the 21st century, houses are going to be net zero. Why not give the Davenport company that's going to be owning this first perfect roofs? You know, I mean, I would say to the Davenport companies, if you're going to be paying, you're not going to be paying the electric bills. But I think that these things should be turned around so that they have south and, you know, type exposures, south and west exposures. So primary interest nitrogen, people, please, we can get this together. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's John Jablonski. I live on Conservation Drive, which is off of Hockanum. And
Sir, would you mind coming closer to the mic? Sorry, I just can't hear you very well.
I live on Conservation Drive, which is off of Hockanum. I pull out onto 6A every day, as I have for 20 years. I just want to add to the safety thing. I know that safety is a big issue. It's a big concern for everybody. It seems like any project that is asking for this many waivers seems a little self-served. I also, looking at this picture up here on 6A coming from the east, if you see a car pulling out of Hockenham looking towards Dennis, you can't pull out. If you see, so anytime you see a car coming, there's not enough time to pull out. So just keeping that in mind, I don't understand how researching coming in off of another road where the speed limit isn't 45 plus isn't researched more. This seems not well thought out. And I know that, you know, when Hockenham Road is a 15% grade pulling out, it's not flat and it's perpendicular. It's hard enough to pull out of there. So safety is a concern for everybody. That's my top concern. I'd love to see the houses in there. It's great. I think we need more, but the road is an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's a woman in the second row.
Oh,
Madam Chair.
Oh, okay, couldn't see the hands. Yeah, sure. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Parker, and I live at 1 Concomsit Circle. And I guess the first point that I would make to your point, Madam Chairman, is that if the drive for this project is located where it's proposed today, when people pull out of there, they are going to have to hit everything they have to be able to get really either way. But the distance between that road and my road, that is so unsafe. People talk about the traffic. This morning, 8:05, I left for work. I counted 31 cars from both directions before I could pull out. That was at 8:05. There was something that I read in the proposal that stated that while the speed limit is at 45, they were able to somehow calculate that people are not going that fast. Believe me, living at 1 Concomsit, I hear most every car, and these cars are not going 45. One of the worst times in the evening for traffic is probably between 5 and 7, and the traffic is flying down that road. I rarely leave during that time because it's going both directions. I think too, the number of cars that are going down 6A has radically changed since the pandemic. I think perhaps when earlier studies were done, the traffic counts are now not accurate because I do believe that we've grown in population, since the pandemic occurred and a lot more people wanted to move to the most amazing place on earth, which is Cape Cod. So I have a real problem with where the road is located. I think, as someone else pointed out, there are a lot of variances being proposed in this, and I really don't understand that. My neighbor right across the street at 2 Concomsit is going to have a 4-bedroom house that I believe was 38 feet high on this tiny little lot. I mean, why should that lot get a variance when all the others are bigger? That I don't understand. It adds to the confusion of more variances in my mind. And lastly, I would say, I don't think anyone echoes well enough how much 6A means to people. Our tourists, those of us who live here, if you drive down 6A, you can get onto 6A at Willow Street. There's not one other property that has this kind of natural habitat. We have deer that live in there, and I know we need housing. Trust me, when I bought my house, it was a difficult find, but there's not one other property from Willow Street past this lot that there's natural habitat. And I just think somebody needs to remember, this is the old Kings Highway for Cape Cod. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, yes. I can see 2 people. Okay, sure.
Thank you. Richard Donovan, 692 Route 6A, Yarmouthport. And my driveway is about 10 feet off from outreach. And so I concur with the concerns of everybody about the location of this proposed street cut. There's a lot of angst created for myself and people coming out of outreach at the same time, trying to be courteous to each other, but also trying to get on the street. And it's just exacerbated during the summertime. So I certainly, from a personal perspective, would oppose the proposed curb cut. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Excuse me.
Hi, I'm Marianne Agresti, and I live at 17 Point of Rocks Road, so it's at the end of Outwood Reach, down by the river. So I hear the concerns about the curb cut, but I have to sort of also bring to all of your attention, if it hasn't been already, that Eileen is part of a very secondary road, a part of a neighborhood where children play all the time and we walk our dogs. And the idea that there would be 14 houses with at least 1 or 2 cars each coming down that road and actually increasing that amount of traffic frightens me very much, because there's already a significant problem there with safety. My daughter waited for the school bus there throughout all of her years of school, and it was already really dangerous. People come down that road, and because it does have a dip, it's sort of fun to drive fast, and they already go really fast. So increasing traffic there is really, really dangerous, as much as any other curb cut. I think this property in itself has really not a great safe solution, frankly. Also, as living on the Bass River and working a lot with the health of the river over the past several years, I'm really surprised that the town just unanimously won't have a development project like this have alternative, what we're calling Title VI. It's shocking to me that you wouldn't do that and that you wouldn't advocate for that more strongly. That only one member of this committee is actually brave enough to advocate for that is very, very, very disappointing to me. We have reports from the Department of Environment of our Commonwealth saying that the river's been impaired for a really long time. We've put lots of energy into trying to save it. You know that there's plans to increase culverts, to widen bridges, to revitalize cranberry bogs. I mean, that's volunteer hours that the citizens of our town are putting in on our own time without getting paid, raising money for our town to make that river a safe place, to make sure that our tourist industry can be maintained, to make sure that the wildlife has maintained, and you guys can't actually join us in that and actually support it. I really feel like you need to regroup and rethink that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I think you have people.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, come on up. Sorry. Oh, virtual, sorry. Thank you.
Patrick Sullivan, Hockenham Road. I asked that the board do a site visit to that area of the proposed access, because no one can tell me that that's going to be safer than coming off of Eileen. And this woman about the school bus, well, the school bus is the man with the 5 children that lives on Route 6A. School bus stops there and they practically get rear-ended because the cars are going so fast down 6A. So I'm cautioning you and warning you that Route 6A curb cuts is a bad idea. Move in the intersection, do whatever you want. It's not going to change it. The only way they can come in for this neighborhood is off of Eileen. Either that, if they don't want to do that, keep it open space.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's go to participants who are with us remotely. Can you see?
It's somebody at AOL.com. I see that.
So,
Hello.
Yeah, that's nice. Yes.
Shaves Rita?
Yeah.
Yes, this is Rita Shaw's. I live at 2 Ken Comset, and I've been there 2 years now. And I'd just like to add that I agree with my neighbors. I feel that the additional traffic coming onto Route 6A is extremely irresponsible and dangerous for people living there, driving there. It gets very busy in the summer, and it's a beautiful highway. It's scenic. It's the old King's Highway. People travel it just to see the scenery. It's absolutely gorgeous. I do it myself. And yes, they do travel extremely fast, faster than they should. And there's school buses. And I sat there on Monday and I counted 35 cars in less than 10 minutes, both ways. And they were going pretty quickly. And we're talking not just cars, large vehicles, trucks, what have you. So I know that this is not, no one, as the other woman mentioned, no one is going to be happy, but I feel that we do need to, think about that in the long term. I also feel that in looking at the plans, I believe that my lot, or the lot behind my house, is not quite what it should be distanced from the actual lot line, my property line. And I would like to explore that as well and hear more about that, because I don't know what all the other variances are. So I would like to hear a little more about that. Thank you for listening to me.
Before you leave, Shaves Rita?
Yes.
Can you just speak again to your question about a lot line?
Yes, so I'm trying to understand it. I looked online and I tried to look at the homes, and from what I can understand, there is a 50-foot. Am I correct? Distance from the lot line to where the house would begin, or where the lot should be, and I believe it's only 48 feet. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's not a big lot. And I would have an enormous house right in my backyard, pretty much. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yes.
And what is your address?
It's 2 Kencomset. I am right across the street. I'm right at the beginning of the street.
Behind lot 1?
I believe so, yes.
Behind lot 1.
Looks like one.
It's a very narrow lot, and it looks like, because of where they want to put the road, you're pushing the house quite close to where it, where you want to put it. It just seems very, very close to the back of my home. So I would like to hear more about the variances, because I'm not quite sure, but I believe it's 50 feet, but I believe that it says 48 from what I can understand.
I believe it's 25 feet to the limit of work from the property line, and then a further 15 feet. for
Okay.
Easement is what you're looking at there. So that's a 40-foot total. But
Okay.
not asking for any variance for this. Is that correct? That meets the requirements.
My understanding is it meets the requirements of having a 50-foot setback from the property line to the edge of the building. But one thing that you need to realize is that this needs to get a building permit. It needs to go through open highway and then needs to get a building permit. If it doesn't meet the zoning bylaw, they're not going to allow it without them going to the zoning board of appeals to get relief. Imagine they would allow such a thing because they could provide the 50-foot.
Exactly. I just think, as all the others have mentioned, that there are a lot of variances in this plan. I personally am looking at this saying, I have to ask permission to change the color of my home because it's Old Kings Highway, but we're asking for all these crazy variances. The road is the safety is my biggest concern. I do pull out onto that street. It's very, very difficult. Sometimes you have to just gun it to make it because these cars are going really fast, and there's no safe solution. And I think it's going to be a disaster in the making if we allow this to happen. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Lisa? Hello, Lisa. Your name and your address, please. Lisa, can you hear me? Okay, we lost Lisa.
Can you hear me now?
All right, Lisa, your name, please, and your address.
Lisa Bartran, 7 Barnacle Road, 2 houses and from Outward Reach, obviously technically impaired. My wife and I, she passed away in October, but we used to walk our neighborhood for close to 20 years. And a couple of things. Eileen Street going from east to west, it's quite a downhill slope. people pick up speed, they get ramming. And I don't know how many times we had to do the calm down, slow down to people coming down. Driving in the car, coming up from Outward Reach to Eileen, you have to come to about a complete stop, especially when I always did, especially when I had a passenger, because if you get T-boned there, you know, they're going to be in big trouble. I'm not unsympathetic to the people on 6A. I get that. I get that you've got limited access. But frankly, there's a cut through from Clinton and that apparently never should have been done. So our neighborhood shouldn't have had the access that it has. So we are already a cut through. We're a cut through for big trucks going through that intersection. So the answer isn't to throw people on Outward Reach and Eileen under the proverbial school bus. Not unsympathetic to 6A, but it's a high rise coming south to north on Outward Reach. If somebody, I call it Eileen Street Extension. If they came in from that way and they were heading east, the gentleman, with all due respect, said, well, but they wouldn't have to turn left to go out. Well, they'd have to go straight across, and going straight across is still trying to get a line of sight from left to right. So it is just, it's dangerous as it is right now. And as another aside, I've always wondered why 6A is 45 miles an hour into there. Maybe what we all should get together and do is petition the state to try and drop it down. I know people still exceed speed limits, but maybe if we could get them to drop that down, we'd all be a lot safer. Thanks so much.
Thank you. William? William, are you going to join us? Thank you. Hello, William. You're muted.
You gotta unmute.
I'd like to second what Lisa said.
William, I'm going to interrupt you. Your name, please, and your address.
I'm sorry. Yes, my name, okay. William Tarnowski and Brian Sheehy, 29 Outward Reach. I'd like to second what Lisa said. The sort of diabolical thing about our neighborhood is that for many hours of the day, it appears to be a pleasant kind of pedestrian situation where kids walk down the street, people walk their dogs, and yet because it's a cut through, there are these egregious moments where cars just whiz through. And we constantly deal with it, even trying to pull out of our driveway. You would think on a street like this, we'd have no worries, but several times we've been almost clipped by somebody taking the shortcut. The fact that we're a shortcut, that we're a way of avoiding the nexus at the end of Union Street and 6A means that very often desperate commuters use both our street and Eileen as a way to either get farther down 6A toward Dennis or over to Setauket to move on from there. And so it's a strange aberration. I again, don't want to speak against the very legitimate concerns of the people on Kincomeset. I simply want to indicate that we have safety concerns too. To take that little kind of a boarded street, the extension of Eileen Street, and suddenly open it up to this quantity of new homes and the traffic associated with that is a real worry. The other thing is, I know this doesn't hold any water from a legal position, but just emotionally, we on the western side of Outward Reach have had a beautiful woods in back of our homes for almost 50 years now, since the neighborhood was first built. So when you think about equity of impact, it is going to be a big change for us, regardless of where the entrance occurs, to suddenly have that woods gone. You know, the deer, the turkeys, we've all enjoyed that. It's part of the reason we bought into the neighborhood, and it's going to be a huge change. To add to that, such an influx of extra traffic is really egregious, kind of egregious. And I think of equity of impact, and boy, we're going to be behind the 8 ball in terms of change. So I just wanted to indicate those concerns. Thanks.
Thank you, William.
That's everybody, Madam Chair.
That's it.
On the screen, yeah.
Everyone on the screen, we've listened to.
Nope, I spoke too soon. Mr. Bill Henderson.
Bill Henderson?
Yeah, hi. Phil Henderson, 183 Eileen, and this obviously impacts me probably as much or more than almost anyone. I mean, I understand that Concomsett, they have the same kind of issue because I'm at the very end. So if it comes in my street, everything's gonna go right by my house, which obviously personally I'm against, but that's not something the planning board probably would take into consideration. But when I leave my house and I do get to the corner of Outward Reach in Eileen, and that's the only way I can go, that corner is very, very bad. I'm either going, like that other gentleman said, I'm either going left, straight, or right, but people are coming down from 6A at a good clip, and that is a very difficult situation to get through. To come in through Eileen, there is a giant hill there, so it would be, I don't know if it's possible or not. I know it would be very difficult for the developer to come in that way. But the one thing I do get out of this whole meeting is that 6A definitely needs to have the speed limit changed there, whether this project goes in or not. That really needs to be, if it's 45, I've never driven 45 there. I didn't even know what the speed limit was, but that does seem extremely high. I mean, 30, 35, maybe at the most. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Phil.
There's another, is it Kala? Or Kaya Jablonski? Ms. Jablonski?
Mr. Jablonski?
Ms. Jablonski, I can't tell from here.
I think we,
Oh, it's
oh,
maybe a
Kayla.
Ms. Maybe a Ms.
Kayla?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your name, your address, please?
Hi, good evening. I'm 6 Conservation Drive. My name is Kayla Jablonski. My husband spoke earlier. Unfortunately, I have a younger daughter, so I wasn't able to get a babysitter to come speak in person, but I did want to voice my concerns. He spoke a little bit about it. I have a little bit more to say. So we live at the end of Hockanum, the last road before the Ancient Way into Kingsway. And there are many of us in our neighborhood that have young children. We have to, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the bus company refuses to come down our road. So we all have to sit up at the top of 6A and Hockanum in order for the bus to show up. And it is terrifying. People fly by the bus. He honks before he comes just to warn people before he puts his lights out. Thankfully, they get off on the side of the road where they don't have to cross. But safety is a huge concern. And to kind of piggyback on everybody else that's spoken tonight, or most of the people that have spoken tonight, on a good day in the winter, it takes me sometimes 2-3 minutes for me to pull out left. Luckily I just changed jobs and I work off of Willow Street, so I can turn right. But that didn't used to be the case. And again, in the summertime, forget it. And, I happen to work in real estate, and I would have to agree with the other woman that lived off of one, and I'm going to butcher this too, Concomsett. There's a serious uptick in people that have moved here. And I can guarantee you that next year you're going to see those numbers, and you're going to see the people that are not just second homeowners, but are year round. And you can see it. I can't explain it. This has been just astonishing to me with COVID and everything else, and people being able to work remote. So my biggest concern is safety. Myself and my neighbors have asked the school multiple times and the bus company, can you please come down our road? We'll be happy to meet at one of our homes. No problem. If you put the road across from ours, and then you have to imagine that you have another let's hope, young people are moving out left and right because they can't afford it here. But let's hope that there's more kids. And you've a bus stop there, and now you have kids that are getting on the bus directly from Hockanum, but then have to cross the street from 6A, from whatever it's Faith or Miracle. That's it. I'm telling you, that is a tragedy waiting to happen. I really just, that I have no problem with this subdivision whatsoever. I think that it's great. Bring more homes in, allow families to establish themselves and have places to live, because they are few and far in between. I just, the one thing I disagree with is the curb cut and where they're proposing to have, Hockanum's a nightmare. You can't have another nightmare right across the street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Don't see anybody.
I don't-
said
I
that
don't-
last time, but I am
That's
saying it
okay.
this time.
I don't see anyone
Nope, no other
else.
hands, Madam Chair.
And so I'd just like to continue, after these public comments, if any additional questions or comments from planning board members, or questions of the applicants. Any more?
I just wanted to make one comment.
Sure.
Just about the participation from the audience. It's very clear that you've all put a lot of thought into this. This is not an easy issue for any of us. And I really appreciate the time and attention that you all have put into this, not only the safety issues, but the environmental issues. It helps the board tremendously. I know too often people come and participate, you make comments and you get no reaction at all from the board. And so you come up, go away with the impression, why did I bother to participate? You have a very active developer here who has got great standing in the community, does terrific development, who wants to do the right thing. And I think that, I don't know if we can solve all the problems, but I do think that they're going to be willing to work with us and try to solve and try to address some of the problems. The safety and the environmental seem to be the two big issues. I don't know if we can solve them. I think it's worth further conversation. I certainly think the environmental issue is worth further conversation. That is, to me, an easy thing to do. With Davenport's reputation and his standing in the community and his love of the Cape, an extra whatever it is, I think is well worth it. And I do think it's a selling point. I think will enhance the project. Safety that's a bear of an issue. I don't know how to solve that. I really don't. I think I need more expert guidance, quite frankly. But the people who live there are very, very, very concerned about it. And people with kids, even more so. And they're relying on the board to give it all our energy to help them deal with this problem. So I do appreciate your input. I appreciate the thought you put into it. Very helpful to all of us.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I know our bravery was called into question, so I just wanted to respond to that one quickly. And this is specifically just to the septic issue. The safety issue is complicated. No perfect solution. I got to tell you, there's no perfect solution to it. I don't know what the answer is for that right now. But regarding the septic in the Bass River watershed, yes, it's an issue. Yes, it's going to be 40 years until we have sewers, right? But it's the right idea. We're on the right track. So there's still 40 years worth of septic system waste going into the ground. And it's not just this development that's going to be putting sewage into the ground during these next 40 years. It's all of you also. So I just want to caution you, before you want to force somebody else to do an innovative system, which is more expensive, which requires a operation and maintenance agreement every year, which costs thousands of dollars out of the pocket of whoever has that system. If we require them to do it, would you be willing to have us require you to do it as well when your system fails?
They are going to be required to do it.
Just a question. You know, it's easy to spend somebody else's money, right? It's a lot harder to spend your own. So Just wanted to throw that out there as a thought.
Thank you, Chris. And any other questions or comments from board members?
Just a
Brett?
couple, Madam Chair, I apologize.
Yes, please.
I apologize, and thank you for everybody for staying the night. It's a long one, and I know as a homeowner, the greatest fear I guess you can have is uncertainty, and that's always troublesome. And when lots get cleared, all of a sudden it calls into question, oh, I thought this was going to be, you know, pristine land forever and ever. And having been on the planning board for numerous decades, it's amazing how many times that comes up. What I'd like to say is on the fire side of the notes, the fire department was complaining about some of the driveways being extra long and only 10 feet wide. And one of their notes on the May 2021 said they'd like them to go to 12 feet wide. Is that 12 feet wide paved, or is that just 10 feet wide and then there's no brush or anything? They just drive on the lawn. I wasn't clear about that on the fire notes.
Would you like them to?
Yeah, I think he's trying to pull up a screen. Can
Driveway
can you
pavement
respond to
section.
that?
I'm just trying to check my notes. It's on,
Can you see it, Brad?
What sheet number is it? So
I'm looking.
In
Hold
order,
on.
it says on the right there, driveway notes, in order to allow safety vehicle access to driveways, all driveways shall be 10 foot wide with 2-foot grass shoulders on each side.
Okay, it says per agreement driveways to be 12 foot wide with brush cut back to facilitate YFD pumper truck.
So if I may, just to comment, we've had several conversations with the Yarmouth Fire Captain regarding what the requirements would be for the driveway pavement section, and got this specific section with these specific notes approved by them as what they were looking for to confirm they had the necessary access to the longer driveways.
Okay, thank you. Paul, you threw me a curveball there on one of them. You were quoting 41% open space. On the plan I'm looking at, it says 38, which is still well over 30. I'm just pulling your tie a little bit on that one. The final note is runoff. The thing that really worries me about this is the runoff. Looking at the topography of that site, taking a walk around it, and probably bringing ticks home for the family, you're going to have some serious runoff. And I am not an engineer. I don't plan to be an engineer. I don't play one on TV. I just know that there is going to be issues of trying to contain water on this site. And I really hope the engineers are paying a close mind to it. It's a troublesome problem. The topography of the lot is not helping you out both on access to 6A or access to Eileen, and now with topography and siting the houses. The one thing that does worry me, and I'm speaking to the whole group, is that when you have a chunk of land like this and a developer, whether his name is Davenport or Goodwin or Smith or Brown or what have you, lays down a good chunk of money and has the right to build homes if he or she follows the rules, is you always have that problem of a 40B right around the corner. And I'm hoping we can make a win-win-win between the neighborhood and the engineers and the town bodies, because I'd hate to see a 40B go in there. And that's where all the rules of zoning go right out the window. And you now have 60 units or 48 units or how many units they can fit on the land. So that's something you got to be careful of here. So let's not push too much on dry chemical toilets and outhouses, and let's try to make a win-win on this. I know, speaking from dealing with Kings Way, there is open capacity at Kings Way. It'd be nice to get a trunk from this development down 6A to the open capacity at the package treatment plants at Kings Way, but I know that's too far to do. But that's something we could always look at way, way down the road. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, any other comments? Kathy?
I guess my only comment would be people keep talking about the waivers that are being requested. We didn't really go through them in any real detail. And I don't think there's quite as many as people are concerned with.
Yeah, if you could run us through those, Kathy.
Well, I think some of them.
Yes, let them, it's their waiver.
And Kathy, I'm going to jump for a minute. Could you just remind the people in attendance why there's a square they see on the plan? It doesn't mean the houses are going to be square. It just means they're trying to fit the square within a certain distance from the cul-de-sacs and the roads.
Well, I believe we've seen some preliminary drawings of the homes, and they are
squares.
They are square.
Oh, okay. I missed that one. Okay. I didn't miss all of them. All right.
But
I apologize.
Yes, they are rectangles. Thank you.
Just going through briefly the waivers, obviously, we've talked a lot about the 400-foot street intersection. The remainder of waivers are really small things that are designed to try to work with the town departments in addition to the subdivision regulations. There's some cases where the subdivision regulations and town department requirements contradict each other, and we simply can't meet both requirements. So in certain scenarios, we're asking for waivers that are essentially being recommended by the town so that we can properly site our utilities and our drainage structures. That's really what the bulk of the rest of these are for, as well as the easement and utility locations. So there's really nothing major here other than the 400-foot.
Yeah, just to get a little bit more detail, that's fine. We're asking for a waiver that the provision that all utility and drainage easements be a minimum of 20 feet wide. The proposed sewer easement along the back of lots 1 through 4 is 15 feet wide, and that was the recommendation of the Yarmouth Engineering Department. The next one is drainage piping. There's a requirement that all the piping be concrete or corrugated aluminum. We've asked to use high-density ethylene, 12-inch piping that meets H25 highway traffic loadings. You can drive on it. So it's a substitute for what's required, but that's about the only difference. And then also the drainage structures. So, we're just changing what we're using out there by way of materials. And then the last one is utility locations, to waive the portion of the provision that requires water and gas mains to be on the same side of a right-of-way. The water department, as he was saying, is the one that said, well, we would like him separated. So you're going to need a waiver for that because that's what we want. So at least 2 of these are the result of working with the town and their board. So they're not variances, they're just waivers of some of the regulations, and they are very small in number. Thank you.
Is there time for questions about what he said? Just one.
Yes, you can ask a question.
Could you follow up with support data about the polymer that you're using for the underground tubes and make sure that they're not going to leach and cause even a worse problem in terms of leaching any things that a lot of polymers do leach into the ground?
You guys know anything about plastics?
I'm not saying you can answer it right now, but it'd be really important to see that.
We can give the spec sheet for the ADS pipe. I mean, it's the type of pipe that it's larger in size, but it's the same type of pipe that we attach to gutters and downspouts to go to a dry well. It's the black rigid pipe that everyone has seen.
In common use.
It's in very common use, but we can, since the question was asked, we can provide you the specifications.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in common use that aren't healthy. So thank you.
Yes, another question.
Patrick Sullivan, Hockenham Road. On December 2nd, 2020 meeting, Brad Goodwin referenced, he did a similar project, Walden Way. There is no comparison Walden Way to Hockenham Road in this axis. Walden Way has clear sight of view as far as you can see, both directions. The only the same thing will be the speed limit, 45. But already cars are slowing down. In a Walden Way, they can get out, but we cannot get out. So in other words, he mentioned Trophy, cross street. Trophy is not a access from a neighborhood. It's just a little cut through from Setauket. So I'm urging the board, before you make any decision about curb cuts on Route 6A, you've heard many speakers tonight about the pros and cons, but I can tell you one thing, there's no way they're traveling down Outwood Reach 45 miles an hour. I can tell you that, because I run through Outwood Reach to Eileen to Setauket, and I see cars, but they're not driving that fast. It may be not ideal for sight, but to put this, like I said, you've never seen the traffic that I see all the time. I've lived there, I built my house in '92. And the traffic routinely backs up from the gas station past Hockenham Road. So if someone coming out of Miracle Way, unless they're taking a right, how are they going to take a left? Hope someone lets them in?
Thank you. You've made your point several times. We appreciate it.
Hockenham Road's a problem.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I just have a clarification.
Yes?
Kathy, Kathy, could I address the
Yes,
question? Kathy?
yes, of course.
Kathy, of the waivers that are being requested, are these all bundled into one vote tonight for the special use permit? How are we going to treat these waivers?
I wouldn't recommend that you make a vote tonight. I think there's some additional information that we're going to
Okay,
be
that's what I
seeking.
thought. Okay.
All
right, that's what I just wanted to clarify that. So this was just your normal public, where we exchange information and come up with additional questions?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And some of the information that was required, we
Requested.
just got
Mhm.
today. So we were going to not be able to take a vote tonight anyway,
Yep, okay.
because of the timetable. I would like to get a sense, though, of the board's sense as to if they are inclined to deny this or rather inclined to accept it and move forward with a list of things. We've put a list of things out already where we've asked you to reply in response to our comments in writing. We've asked you to schedule some perk tests that you said would be coming. We've also asked for a relook at the curb cut and whether or not there is any chance of addressing that. So we've asked them to do some things and come back to us. But I need to get a sense of the board if we're inclined to have them go forward at this point and do some more work and come back and see us. I am so inclined to ask them to come back and fulfill a couple of these requests. And to ask them to look carefully at, although they meet the requirements for Title V, if there's any opportunity for you to look at innovative and alternative septic systems. There's no prohibition against you looking at something that's of a higher quality for our Bass River estuary. So I am so inclined to ask them to listen to the people and what they had to say this evening and see if they can come back and accommodate some of their requests. So I need to get a sense from the board if others are so inclined. I'm going to start with you, Brad.
Since 1994, I've never seen a planning board turn down a definitive after accepting the prelim. So we definitely have to go forward and get some more information from them, but I don't think I've ever seen that. I wish I serve on the Affordable Housing Committee in 2 different areas. So I know we love the money, but if we're asking the developer to put more money into their ground, I'm wondering if we have a way to put a waiver or a little bit of a looseness into not giving affordable housing as much money. I'm just looking for some win-wins here because I do not want to see a 40B come in where all things are broken. And then all of a sudden you've got 60 units on this 15-acre parcel. And people are wondering, why didn't we accept the 14 units? I'd like to see, I think Hockanaan Road squaring off is the correct way to go. But if Randy is going to give us new data, it always doesn't hurt to look at new data and see if moving it further to the east is a good idea. And if he's already doing the work and he wants to try bringing in off Eileen, I'll be happy to looking at a drawing at Eileen. The only reason I said no at the beginning of this hearing is I just saw the huge mound of earth in front of me. But as one of the participants said in tonight's meeting, anything is possible. But yes, I'd like to continue on this and see if we can make a win-win for the town of Yarmouth and the developer.
Jim Saban.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I think, one of the things we're dealing with is not only the crisis of water and saving our rivers, but also the crisis of housing in our community. And I don't want to say yay or nay to anything until I give the applicant the opportunity to address some of the concerns that not only we have, but the neighbors have as well. So I would recommend that we give them the opportunity to come back and respond to some of those before we make that final decision.
Thank you. Brad?
Will?
Will.
That's okay. I've been looking at the zoning bylaw as we've been meeting all night, and 40256 has some pretty specific criteria in it. And I, Madam Chair, don't believe the applicant has met those criteria. Now, unless I'm wrong, 40256 says approval should be granted upon a determination, and then there's a lot of stuff, and allows more efficient operation of streets, public utilities, and other public services. In addition, there shall be minimum disruption of established neighborhoods, especially with regard to unusually heavy traffic, visual impact, etc. In addition, under 4022, under our objectives, one of the objectives here is to introduce variety and choice into residential development to meet housing needs. And I respectfully disagree. We do not need more single-family, four-bedroom, year-round rental houses in our town. What we need is multifamily houses. And unless I've misread Kathy Williams' memo, which I don't believe I have, I am not inclined to move forward. However, I respect the majority of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Susan?
No, I hate to disagree with our new member who I work so well with on the drive-in site, but I absolutely would not vote to allow the applicant to move forward tonight. My reason being, I was the lone vote 2 years ago that voted no on this project, based on the septic issue, the Tom Barron conversation. And what I heard tonight was nothing has been done with the suggestions that were made almost 2 years ago, well, at least a year and a half ago, about the septic issue. This town has made a commitment. We all participated in the vision statement. I think the number one issue was the environment in this town, and the environment in not only in the purest sense, which is the living environment and our water, our beaches, but our living environment. If we don't make a commitment tonight, or at least I'm going to make a commitment tonight, that you have to take this seriously. And if this is only an issue of money, and it is only an issue of money, that technology is there, the ability to put an enhanced system is available. The fact that you don't want to do it doesn't mean anything to me. In fact, it's almost insulting that you would say to the town, it's just, we don't want to spend the money. It's not that you don't have it, you just don't want to spend it. I'm not on the planning board to approve that kind of thing. I think you can do it. I agree with Chris. I think the safety issue is much more difficult. The environmental issue to me is a no-brainer. So I would absolutely not vote to, if I had to take a vote tonight, it would be a no vote.
Chris?
Yeah, I think there's still some questions to be answered to my satisfaction. But again, I'm all in favor of saving the water too. I drink it just like all of you do. But remember, if you're going to ask somebody else to do it, don't be surprised when somebody comes around and makes you do it also. Just keep that in mind.
Okay. Then I then would like to, again, based on the discussions here this evening, I believe there's some additional information. Kathy, do you want to summarize that, or do we want to make sure that in conversation with them, the specifics you can relate to them, but generally the areas?
I think it's simply providing written responses to the staff comments, the planning board comments, and the public's comments, and providing that supplemental information that they're looking for. I think it's very clear what the issues are, and the septic and the safety have been identified. So I think written responses to those comments of everyone would provide clarification for some issues. And the only other thing is whether the planning board is interested in having some type of peer review done for the traffic and safety of the curb cut. Typically, with subdivisions, it's staff, town staff does it. We don't have a lot of expertise with regard to traffic. I mean, I know some about traffic. Amanda Lima, the town engineers, know something about traffic, but as far as someone countering some of the comments made about traffic or whether this is safer or that's safer, you may want your own expert And that's possible through the rules and regulations. The applicant has actually submitted some $2,500 already for potential peer review, should the board wish to have that. I don't know if you want to find out what the responses are first, and then, because they need to provide us with something which would then be peer reviewed. But it's up to you guys as to whether you would be interested in having that peer review.
And we have to set a date of have them coming back. Don't they have to come back before us before June 22nd?
The 90 days for the definitive subdivision expires on June 22nd.
Right.
We need to get an extension if you guys would be willing to provide the extension. Otherwise, we would have to vote on it prior to that with the information that we have available.
So in terms of steps here, the first step needs to be the extension, it sounds like. Would you say? A request.
Well, I think if you didn't want to ask for the extension, you would continue this hearing to a time and date certain prior to that, which would probably be, in order for you to have time to prepare the information, the June 15th planning board meeting.
Is
And
that
then at that time, you could have the conversation again as to whether you want to allow for an extension, or you guys would be voting on the information that you have at that time.
So before we get to peer review, would you be able to respond at a June 15th meeting? Or would more time be beneficial for you?
Just a question through the chair. When would you want to have the information for you folks to review as well as the general public
For a June 15th meeting.
for the June 15th meeting?
It would be nice to have it, 2 weeks in advance. I mean, I typically look at it and then I provide comments to the board so that they can get.
So we get our packages about a week in advance.
Typically, the Friday before
So-
is when I submit them, but maybe if you submitted something the Monday before, I could probably look at it sometime during that week. The question is whatever that information is, I don't know what, we would have to decide on the 15th whether a peer review would be required and an extension would be required, or whether a decision would be made at that meeting.
Can we maybe discuss the peer review? Because I think that's going to give them some direction if they know that there's going to be some time there for a peer review if they're going to give us some more information. So but I'd be in favor of having something peer reviewed. I want the public to know that it's been looked at by somebody else so they can be comfortable knowing that the numbers aren't just Davenport's numbers. They've been looked at by somebody else.
Oh, I agree. The peer review, I think, is important.
While I agree with that, I don't think it's going to change the facts that we've heard, the emotional facts, but still facts of the people who are living this reality. So
But that's what the peer review is for.
I got it. I'm just saying that I am skeptical I have much more faith in the people that actually live there and are going through it and are experiencing it. And I say that because one day it could be us. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not going to go there right now. We've got to talk among ourselves. So Kathy, again, sequencing and your ability to meet and information back to us to meet on the 15th. I mean, we would need additional information that we've requested in order to scope out what a peer review would be. So the timetable we're working on is pretty compressed.
Would how long would it take for the peer review to get something like this? I know it's different every time, but any ideas?
I honestly don't, because I'm not really sure what they would be assessing. And I don't know whether you want to be providing something in more detail than what you've provided so far, because it wasn't a true analysis per se. It was, they looked at crashes, they looked at sight distance, they looked at traffic generation, and that type of thing. But if that's what you want to get peer reviewed, I can try and see what we can do. I honestly don't know. I've never had to do a peer review before.
So through the chair, it sounds to me like you would need something, if the meeting is on the 15th, you'll need something by June 1st delivered to Kathy's office.
That sounds about right.
That gives us a little more than a week and a half.
Right.
The gentleman that has to do all that heavy lifting with the traffic is Mr. Hart, and he's still on. I don't know if Randy could chime in and about the timeline, but I think we could get your written responses from most of the civil work, our work, into Kathy by the 1st of June. I'm not sure about the traffic analysis, and I don't want to speak for Randy.
I appreciate that, John. Thank you. No, I believe also that we can probably get the responses in that timeline. Doing any type of additional work beyond what we've discussed tonight would not be possible. But yeah, certainly getting responses would be easily done.
Well, if I get responses by June 1st, I mean, I'm not going to have the peer review before June 15th.
Right. And Kathy, just to give you a perspective on the peer reviews, because we're doing them everywhere these days. You know, getting a proposal in and getting the work done, you know, we're talking 4 weeks minimum, probably more like 5 or 6. That's just the reality of it. Now, the good news here is that, you know, we did do an abbreviated analysis. We just focus on 3 things. So maybe it's a little quicker than that, but I wanted to give you a perspective while I had a chance.
Okay, thank you.
And-
Again, yes,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, sure.
I guess what we would like to do is if maybe what we could do is just continue it to the 15th, this meeting to the 15th. If we get the materials in time, I think we'll have a better idea of the extension. And I'll also have a chance to talk to my client. I just, you know, I know Christian's here. I've talked to the rest of the team as well. So, that's why I was the one to sign something to extend it. And
Yeah.
now it's just going to go. I think it's also a good carrot for us to move as well. You know,
Sure.
let's just go forward. So.
Sure. Okay, so we'll expect that you'll be able to satisfy the requirement to get us the information by the 1st. If you feel at some point you can't do that, then we would expect that you would request an extension. Okay,
Okay.
is that, if I got that
That's
right?
fine for the written responses, and I can take a look at it and see if it makes, you know, sense and everything and provide comment to you, but there will not be a peer review.
I understand that. Yeah, understood.
Can the peer review, I mean, I don't know how long it starts, or how long it takes between the time you ask for it and the time it starts.
Like I say, I've never done one before. So it would be a case of having to solicit probably 3 different traffic engineers. I don't know whether there's the possibility of maybe, I know the Cape Cod Commission has helped us out in the past, but they may be too busy to do something along
Yeah.
those lines.
Just trying to get a timeline on that as well. So.
Yep.
yeah.
The preliminary was in December of 2020, so I think it's been a little bit delayed already. I think we just want to get the information necessary, get the peer review done so that we can answer the questions of the public.
Yes, Susan, go ahead.
It also depends on what we're going to ask them to do. I mean, I heard 2 very different things tonight. I heard, you know, information from you all that says there's not much activity at that intersection. There's a few property, you know, accidents, and yet we had 2 witnesses, 2 participants say is particularly the fireman, the EMT fellow, responds all the time to something going on there. So that to me is a real gap in information. That is the kind of thing I would like a peer review. So it really depends on what we're going to ask them to do. I don't think we're going to be out looking at them to do the grading and all that kind of stuff. I think it's more based on what we heard tonight. You know, what
and
is
what
the
the-
actual issue with traffic
And
there?
what the responses are that we
Right.
get back from them.
Right.
And that would then become the basis of the peer review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Typically,
Okay.
that's what it is. You have to
Sure.
present something and then we send it to people and then they provide us with a quote or quote
No,
for the
we
work.
can get an idea of an extension.
Okay.
Once, you know, once we
But you
start.
see what you've
Yeah.
got to look at. I
That's fine.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, so,
Need a motion.
yeah. May I have a motion to continue the hearing on definitive subdivision plan? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Okay.
interrupt you. I just had one other question, has
Sure.
nothing to do with that. As presently composed, we have 6 members, and I know Ms. Hartsgrove is not here. Is she going to review the tape, sign the affidavit that says she's watched it, and join in this vote?
Yes, that is
that the
required
plan?
for any public hearing. And some of us have already gone through that once.
Okay.
Will,
Yes.
and
Yes,
I
I have.
assure you that all of those requirements will be met.
I just wasn't sure if she was going to participate. We're going to go with 6. I
She's
just,
been unable to attend meetings because of another commitment. I would assume by June 15th, her commitment would be completed and she would be able to participate. in the
Perfect.
meeting.
And we will make sure that she reviews the videotape. so to
Okay,
speak.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. So may I have a motion to continue this hearing on definitive subdivision plan number 2936A, and special permit number 116 to be included in our agenda for our June 15th meeting.
So moved.
5:30.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Next on our agenda are committee assignments. Just to discuss the newest member of our board, Jim Saban. Well, he's not new to the planning board, for sure. Jim, for the past several months, Susan and I have been filling in some slots where Tom Barron was assigned. And one in particular, I am on RAC. And I believe you are on RAC as well. As a, no.
He's on land disposition.
Land use. I'm sorry.
Disposition.
Drive-in site
Sorry
utilization
about that.
committee and the land
Yeah,
disposition committee.
okay. And as I understand, you're an at-large member on land use?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, how would you like to be the planning board rep? Instead,
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
okay,
I
because
I've
Susan
got
would
no
like to
choice
be,
but to continue those.
as long as you're on the committee for us, that's what's most important. Susan would like to be relieved of that.
Only because they meet at like 11 o'clock in the morning and I'm always at work. And
I
it's hard-
share your pain.
I
I was
know.
late the other day.
But, and in order to be a rep, you gotta go.
Oh, yeah, oh,
And
yeah,
I've only
absolutely.
been to like 3 meetings and I think they've had, several others that I just couldn't get to. So it's
The-
not fair to the board.
The nice thing right now is that we're pretty much caught up with things. So there's very few meetings. So there's very light lifting to be on that committee. right now. So
All right. And you'll continue on DISAC?
Oh, gosh, do I have to?
Yes.
Susan is on that.
He's, yeah,
I'm on dissect,
So-
but he's the chair.
right, but she's the planning board representative.
Representative.
He's
I'm a
not.
member at large as well.
But he can still do that.
I don't think,
We have 2 planning board members?
we've had that
Oh, okay.
before.
Yeah, I'm
I get-
still
that's my
acting as a
question. I'm
member at
sorry.
large, right?
He's on dissect
Just 'cause I
as the
happen to be
chair,
on the
not
I'm
as a
sorry.
planning board.
She's
member.
the representative. from the
Yeah.
planning
Yeah,
board.
I
He's a
assumed that
citizen.
that would remain.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if it was okay to have 2. So I then will continue with water resources as my second committee.
So is this a vote by the board to have Jim Saban be the planning board's representative to the land disposition committee?
So I'll make a motion that Jim Saban be the planning board representative on the
And
Land
disposition.
disposition.
Land Disposition Committee,
Second,
replacing Susan.
Susan's
Britton.
like, yes, second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to repeat my from previous meeting 2 weeks ago that I have done 2 cycles on the Capital Budget Committee. It also meets at an incredibly inconvenient time and in a very compressed window. I also serve on the school building committee as well as the library planning committee, and have expressed an interest in helping out with the open space planning committee. And I'm formally requesting to be relieved of my duties on the capital budget committee forthwith. That's all my legal stuff. I got no more legal stuff.
All I would say is we normally do assignments in September.
Oh, so
and
this
I
is
would
just
ask-
the temporary.
This is just because of the situation.
My apologies.
This
I
was,
retract my previous
it's
statement.
okay. You're on it till September, but you won't have any meetings this summer.
Approved. Okay. No, but I still am expressing my interest on the open space committee as needed. I don't know if the ad hoc nature of it has reared its ugly head yet.
I'm meeting with the Conservation
memo.
Commission tomorrow night to talk about it.
Okay, so for now until September, we've all got our assignments.
Right.
And I
Okay.
will notify the town administrator's office that they're going to be needing to look for an at-large member for the land disposition committee because
Thank you. Meeting minutes. May I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of May 4th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Yeah, way to go, Jimmy.
Although I do want to make a point to the committee assignment comments by Mr. Rubenstein attempting to volunteer me for the capital budget committee. So kind. Well, as noted in the minutes.
And as noted at your eloquent discussion at town meeting.
Oh, that's.
Just following up on.
To figure out what capital is anymore.
As more reason why you should hopefully humbly serve us in that capacity.
We shall discuss it.
Yes,
at a
sir.
later date.
We shall, respectfully, of course.
Of course.
Kathy, to you, I do have one question on zoning board of appeal agenda. You've sent us the agendas and the various decisions. We've talked about this once in the past, solar panels on parking lots. It's coming up. Is it this Thursday? Cape Cod Hospital is
Correct.
coming before
Yeah,
us?
the continued hearing for that.
Right, right. Some gaps in our,
We don't regulate them at all.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily an issue in some places, but we have a lot of parking lots in the front. And it becomes a little bit tricky with our planting islands that we require for our in-lot trees. So it's a little bit tricky. Solar, it has some protections, so we'd have to be careful about if we wanted to make any changes. I certainly would have to talk to town council on the best way to address that. But I know, I think it was, I can't remember the address, but on White's Path, where the compact is, they put a bunch in the back, which I had no issues with. It was great, but then they have a parking lot in the front and they put some in the front. And it's, blocking the
Yeah,
building.
yeah.
So we're gonna have people put all this time and effort into the architecture of a building or wanting a building to look great, and then we're putting
put it-
things. So it's probably something that should be looked at. We just don't know when, how.
So
Well, I
the
guess
building that Kathy's referring to is our building.
Yeah.
261 White's Path that we're at. I was disappointed that they put them on that side of the parking lot because it doesn't protect me from snow in the winter. But they really, I at first was concerned about them. They really blend right in.
That spot is better than most.
Because we have plenty of trees
in front of it.
between our parking lot and the road. There's
Yes.
there's a
You almost wouldn't know they would.
green belt, I
yeah,
guess would be a
yeah.
better term. But if you want to get an idea what they look like, that's
I
what they're
drive
at.
by it a lot, live over there. Yeah. Okay, just a comment. I don't want to take up any more time. Any committee updates since our last meeting?
I just want, the driving site is appearing in front of the selectmen, the
24th.
24th. The chairman will give an update on where we are and next steps. And
Was Jim
status
giving that
report.
presentation?
I am?
The chairman will do.
You're so cute.
Who shall remain nameless at this point?
That's next week.
Yes, we're giving an
Okay.
update on the Riverwalk Park, the boardwalk and event
Oh, good.
space. for the Board of Selectmen on
Good.
Tuesday. the
Making
24th.
progress.
We are. It looks, actually, I'm putting to PowerPoint together and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of work
There's a
that's
lot.
been done.
Getting there.
Any board member items?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have one. Since I now work in Brewster, I attend some Brewster events, and I was able to listen to the town manager of Brewster discuss how the state outdoor dining regulations, in his opinion, are going to be sunsetted at some point in the next, well, he didn't know, but 12 to 24 months. As you know, the state of Massachusetts basically came in and said to all of us local zoning folks, outdoor dining for everyone, and countermanded whatever the local, each town zoning laws were. And he made an excellent point, which is he advised the folks in Brewster, and I also was thinking as a Yarmouth resident, he advised the folks in Brewster on their planning board to start thinking ahead and looking ahead to see if some of the state mandated outdoor dining rules before they get sunsetted, how and could we and should we discuss how to make some of them permanent perhaps, or whether it's worth that discussion perhaps in the future. So I wanted to bring it up tonight.
I think that those rules had a lot to do with the alcohol outside, and it allowed people to do things like instead of needing to get anything from the relief from the zoning board of appeals, Mark as the building commissioner could do it. So you saw a lot of people with like Sea Dog Pub, for example.
Right.
They had seats out in their parking spaces, but they're coming before, they just came before site plan review to be building a patio on the side because they like the outside den. So they're proposing to do that, and they're just going through the process and doing it. I think there's plenty of rules that are already available now for people to do it. They just they didn't have the time to do it as quickly. So it was like,
I just wasn't sure if that gave us, given what I expect the business community, as you've already indicated, Kathy, would be interested in having some of these temporary changes become more permanent. Is that an opportunity for us to look at anything and how we can do it better and faster and cheaper?
I think a lot of it had to do, I mean, no matter what, I mean, everyone has a septic system. So if you're permitted for 100 seats and you want to have 25 outside, you have to take 25 from inside and move it outside temporarily. And then you have the alcohol, the premises for your alcohol service, which there's nothing we can do about that. You have to go through the Board of Selectmen in order to extend it outside. So, but for a short period of time, that was allowed to be done by the town administrator.
Which
So they were
explains why
just-
he brought it up.
Yeah.
Yes, Susan?
Speaking of outside, Kathy, has there been any activity on people asking for permits for the food truck? The beach is open Memorial Day weekend, don't they?
Right.
Anyone asking for permits to do food trucks?
I'm
for
afraid I
example?
don't know, but I may not know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that becomes a popular thing.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
one other thing, he did mention, speaking of boardwalks, which are very big, including in Sandwich, but that the town of Brewster is going to be building a brand new boardwalk off of Drummer Boy Park to Wing Island and then spur off to the Museum of Natural History. And as you can imagine, that is a tremendous project that is not going to be, they're not going to renovate the existing quote unquote boardwalk. They are going to build brand new. And it would just be, it's another opportunity for maybe towns to be aware of things that are happening in similar veins. Perhaps the town of Brewster can learn from all the hard work that you all put in and vice versa, and perhaps Sandwich, but I thought that was relevant. So I wanted to bring it up. You're welcome.
Any other staff updates, Kathy?
The only thing is
Correspondence?
we have received a road application, revitalization overlay architectural district for
Wow.
Did you say road?
road.
Wow, yeah.
Oh, okay. They said road.
I heard his
Brad's
voice.
like, oh no.
Wow. That's a memory. Whew.
It's a combination of 1276 and 1282. It's the J Mart project. It's for it's on Route 28, sorry.
Thank you.
Where is it?
It's opposite
Down by
Cumberland Farms.
D'Angelo's.
No, it's this way.
Down towards Four Corners.
Yeah, it's
Down
opposite
towards Four Corners on
On the left.
same
as you
side.
come
Left.
Thai restaurant.
Yeah, by the Thai restaurant
Yeah.
and D'Angelo's and all that.
Have like
that
5
plaza.
cottages, and then they have the small gas station and convenience store. They want to build a larger convenience store, more gas pumps, and have 4 top of shop units.
They also got a waiver from the zoning board to sell used cars.
Yeah, sell used cars.
I'm
yeah.
not sure whether they ever did that, but
Hmm?
they did get the waiver, but I don't know whether they ever did that.
They did.
Oh, they're selling used
They-
I have a
cars.
sign. I got
Yeah.
my inspection sticker there today.
Yeah.
They have a sign. that
Yeah,
says,
they,
"We
not
sell you
many, but
guys."
they do have them.
Yeah, they bet there's the lots
Oh,
getting
actually, it's
full.
not the same building. It's
Okay.
the other gas station.
So that,
But
that road.
I'm gonna-
by- oh,
The
oh,
top of shop of housing there, is that going to flow into the Bass River?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's already 5 units there now. And
Are they gonna replace those with,
Yeah.
oh, so those are going, it's just
Yeah.
the location will be changed.
And it is in phase 1 versus phase 8, so it's a little bit different. But the thing with the road is, you guys review it for the design, you're the design review authority for road projects, and you need to determine whether it meets the architectural and site design standards. That's typically something that's done by design review committee. But for this road projects and a couple other projects, you guys are the authority. A copy of it goes to CEDC for their input and recommendations of whether there's an economic benefit. And that's something that's going before CEDC on Tuesday at your meeting. And then I need to see if we can't schedule a design review committee meeting to kind of talk about it. But it's a public hearing and it would need to be scheduled for June 15th to stay within the 45 days. So even though we're.
Oh, my goodness. Whoa.
It's gonna be
Isn't
fun.
it already May 18th?
I know.
My goodness.
Speaking of June 15th, I'm going to be on vacation, but I will do my damnedest to zoom in with you guys because I don't think you can lose a member on the June 15th meeting.
By the background picture, are you not on vacation already?
I wish I was, sir.
Important to know because
I think
isn't
it's
one of
important if you could do that, Brad, because
No,
think-
I've just made a note. As soon as you called the vote to June 15th, I wrote down on my calendar, bring computer. So
that's a 2/3, the special permit, right? For the
Yep.
Just, with regard to special permits it's for a cluster subdivision. There's no special permit for a regular subdivision. So if we don't allow the cluster subdivision special permit, doesn't mean they couldn't do a traditional.
What is the
subdivision.
difference, Kathy? Just the number of units on the site?
It's instead of having each lot having a minimum of 40,000 square feet and basically encompassing the entire lot,
Right.
they've condensed it into a smaller lots, and then you have that open space. And then
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just if I can make a couple quick comments. First, thank you for welcoming me to the board. I look forward to getting up to speed in the goals and ambitions of the committee as a whole. I must say, Will, I take some objection to your comment earlier about us not needing housing. One of the reasons I wanted to get on the planning board is because we do need housing, single-family homes and accessory dwelling units. And I think it's critical that we address that issue so that we're not one of only 4 towns that has no ADU bylaws that gets put into the newspapers.
we have an ADU
we
bylaw.
We do, I know, but it gets put into the newspapers that we don't.
I don't believe I said anything about ADUs, but
No, you
I hear
said-
what you're saying.
You said
Single family. Yeah, I did.
Right.
I did.
The point I'm making is we need to look at the housing issue, and with sewering coming into town, we also need to start looking at how that's going to affect our existing residential neighborhoods where right now you can only have a 2-bedroom house because the lot is only so big. But once we put that pipe down the middle of the road, all bets are off. You can put whatever we dictate. So we need to make sure that we look at those things and those unintended consequences of that come into play.
I think Chris also echoes that from what he said earlier.
We've begun those discussions.
Yeah.
So I look forward to getting caught up with you up to speed with all that and working with you over the next year or so.
Great.
That's
Well,
all.
welcome. Glad to have you on board.
We do need to develop, not we, but the town needs to develop land use control regulations that will limit. We only have a certain amount of additional sewer flow, so it's not carte blanche. It's a wild, wild west when the sewer comes down. You would need to get an allocation. And we have allocated based on our build out for our 0% state revolving fund, 1,000 bedrooms dispersed around the community in all 8 phases. So you're
Really?
gonna have
All
to
8? Is it only 1,000?
Additional.
additional.
Oh, it's 1,000 each phase.
No,
What?
A total of 1,000 more units?
Yep.
1,000 more bed, 1,000 more bedrooms. That's different than Route 28. That's in the residential
okay.
area.
Oh,
Route
thank you.
28 has a much
Because I was thinking about
larger-
hotels and
Yeah,
other
no, no,
things
no,
that we
I'm
talked
sorry.
about
This is in
previously.
the
Thank you.
residential neighborhoods.
Okay.
Route 28 is almost the Wild Wild West, but it's not quite. It's not quite. But there's a lot more density that will, and we want that. We want that.
Yeah, I'm not talking multifamily or Route
Thank you.
28.
Understood.
Yeah, no, that would be awful. There'd be nothing.
Okay, any other staff updates, Kath, for us? Okay, so our next meeting is June 1st. After that will be a very busy June 15th meeting, unless there is an extension requested.
When do we meet in July, Madam Chair? Do you know?
July 6th,
Thank you. That's what I
July
thought.
6th.
I believe that's the
Because
first
Monday is
Monday.
the 4th. I couldn't
Bless you.
remember. Makes
If
sense
we have no
now.
other further business,
Can I just ask
Yes, Suzanne?
what would be on the agenda for the June 1st meeting? Is this like, do you want to continue the discussion on the goals? I don't know.
yeah, I think we should, we've pushed that off. Do we have any regulatory stuff coming up that we need to?
I have no business items for the first, no.
Is there any prep work we could do on the road application? Is there any?
Not really, because it's a public hearing, so it would have to be publicly noticed before you guys really talk about it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, public hearing, okay. So that's what we'll focus on. We'll have kind of a one-off on, at least for that night, for goals for the coming fiscal year. Okay, and with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done, Joe.